Ethan Cole never imagined a desperate woman in a $1,000 dress would walk into his oil-stained garage and offer him money to lie. Not just any lie, pose as her boyfriend at a family event where fortune shifted with a single wrong word. He should have said no, should have sent her back to whatever pristine world she came from. But desperation recognizes desperation, and when she named a figure that could change his daughter's life, the word yes slipped out before his better judgment could stop it. What he didn't know? This wasn't just about family pressure. It was corporate warfare, and he'd just become collateral damage. Follow this story to the end, hit like, and comment your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The fluorescent lights in Cole's auto repair flickered at 7:47 p.m., the same way they'd been flickering for 3 years. Ethan kept meaning to fix them, kept meaning to do a lot of things. But when you're a single father running a two-man shop, and the second man quit 4 months ago, meaning to do something and actually doing it occupied entirely different universes. He was elbow deep in a transmission rebuild, grease coating his forearms like a second skin, when the door chimed. "We're closed," he called out without looking up. The sign outside clearly said they shut down at 7. People couldn't read or didn't care, usually both. "I know." The voice made him pause, not because it was female, plenty of women brought cars in, but because of how it sounded, controlled, precise, like every syllable had been measured before being released into the world. Ethan straightened, wiping his hands on a rag that was probably dirtier than his hands. The woman standing in his doorway didn't belong there. That much was immediately clear. She wore a dress that probably cost more than his mortgage payment, deep navy with clean lines that suggested money without screaming it. Her dark hair was pulled back in a way that looked effortless but probably took 20 minutes. Mid-30s, maybe. Composed in a way that felt rehearsed. "Then you know I can't help you tonight," Ethan said, keeping his voice even. "Come back tomorrow. We open at 8. "I'm not here about a car." "Then you're definitely in the wrong place." She took 3 steps into the shop, heels clicking against concrete that had seen better decades. Her eyes scanned the space, the cluttered workbenches, the calendar from 2024 still hanging on the wall, the child's drawing tape near the register showing a stick figure, man and a smaller stick figure girl holding hands. "You're Ethan Cole," she said. Not a question. "That's what the sign says. You have an 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She's in Ms. Patterson's 3rd grade class at Riverside Elementary. You coach her soccer team on weekends. You've owned this shop for 6 years, inherited it from Frank Morrison when he retired. You have no criminal record, no outstanding debts beyond your mortgage, and the business loan you took out in 2022. You're widowed. Your wife died 4 years ago. Cancer." Ethan's jaw tightened, the rag in his hands twisted into a knot. "You want to tell me what the hell this is?" "I need to hire you. I fix cars, and I don't take kindly to people digging into my life." "I'm not here about your mechanical skills, Mr. Cole." The way she said it, clinical, direct, made something cold settle in his chest. He dropped the rag on the workbench, giving her his full attention for the first time. Up close, he could see the tension she was carrying. It lived in the set of her shoulders, the too careful way she held herself, like someone who'd learned to never let their guard down. "Then what are you here about?" She pulled an envelope from her purse, set it on the workbench between them. It landed with the soft sound of thick paper, expensive paper, the kind that whispered money before you even opened it. "I need you to pose as my boyfriend." Ethan stared at her, then at the envelope, then back at her. "You're joking." "I've never been less amused in my life." "Lady, I don't know what kind of—" "My name is Sienna Vale." She said it like it should mean something. When his expression didn't change, something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe. Or disappointment. Hard to tell. "Vale Industries. We manufacture aerospace components, defense contracts, commercial aviation. My father built the company from nothing. He died 7 months ago. I'm sorry for your loss." "Don't be. We weren't close." She said it without emotion, like commenting on the weather. "What matters is that I'm now the CEO, and certain members of my family are very invested in proving I'm unfit for the position." Sounds like a family problem. It is, which is why I need someone to accompany me to a family event. Someone who isn't part of my world. Someone who can play a role convincingly for approximately 6 hours. Ethan picked up the envelope. Heavy. He didn't open it. You have a whole city full of people. Why walk into a mechanic's shop? Because you're perfect. I'm really not. You're a single father with a stable life, blue collar, hardworking, no connections to my social circle. You're attractive enough to be believable, but not so polished that you'd seem planted. You're protective of your daughter, which suggests loyalty. And you need money. Excuse me? The business loan. You're behind on payments, not catastrophically, but enough that it's causing stress. I saw you checking your phone 3 times while I was talking, probably your bank app. His phone was indeed face up on the workbench, bank balance visible. Ethan flipped it over, anger rising hot and quick. You don't know anything about me. I know you're trying to keep this shop running while raising a child alone. I know you're doing an admirable job of both, but that it's harder than you expected. I know that Lily needs new cleats for soccer, and you've been putting it off because the shop's HVAC system is making a noise that concerns you, and you can only fix one problem at a time. She paused. I also know you'll say no. People like you always do initially. You have principles. That's part of why you're useful. I'm not interested. Open the envelope? Not interested, he repeated. Mr. Cole, it's late. I have to pick up my daughter from my neighbor's place. So unless you need your oil changed, we're done here. He turned back to the transmission, dismissing her, expecting her to leave. She didn't. $15,000, Sienna said quietly. Ethan's hand stilled on the wrench. That's what's in the envelope, a cashier's check. Half now, half when the event is over. All you have to do is show up, smile, answer some basic questions, and leave. 6 hours. No physical contact beyond holding my hand or putting your arm around my waist if absolutely necessary. You'll be coached on what to say. It's theater, Mr. Cole. Nothing more. He didn't turn around. Why? I told you, no. Why does it matter? You're the CEO. You run the company. Why do you need a fake boyfriend to prove anything? Silence stretched between them. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, just slightly. The control slipped half an inch, and underneath it was something raw. Because my family doesn't just want me to fail. They need me to, and they'll use any weapon they can find. My father's will stipulates certain conditions. Behavioral clauses. If I'm deemed unstable or making questionable personal decisions, the board can initiate a review process. My uncle has been campaigning that I'm erratic, too emotional, making reckless choices, dating inappropriate men. Are you dating inappropriate men? Currently, I'm not dating anyone, which is apparently also a problem. The narrative is that I'm either a cold, unfeeling machine who can't maintain relationships, or I'm secretly involved in something scandalous that I'm hiding. I can't win, so I'm changing the game. Ethan finally turned, looked at her directly. This is insane. It's practical. It's dishonest. It's survival. Something in her voice made him pause. She wasn't pleading, wasn't even asking, really, just stating facts with the exhausted certainty of someone who'd already run every other option into the ground. I have a daughter, Ethan said. I know. She doesn't get involved in this. Whatever this is, she doesn't know about it. She doesn't meet you. She doesn't hear about it. Nothing. Agreed. I mean it. So do I. Sienna picked up the envelope, held it out. This isn't about her. It's not even really about you. You're a prop. A very well-compensated prop, but still, just think of it as a 6-hour acting job. Ethan didn't take the envelope. What's the event? A dinner. At my family's estate, my cousin's engagement party. There will be roughly 40 people, extended family, some business associates, members of the board. You'll need to wear a suit. I'll have one sent to you if necessary. I own a suit. I'm sure you do. The condescension was light, almost invisible, but he caught it. Rich people, always assuming. What happens if someone figures out I'm not who I say I am? They won't. But if they do, then I handle it. Your part ends the moment you walk out the door. Anything that happens after is my problem, not yours. Ethan crossed his arms, studying her. She held his gaze without flinching. Whatever else she wasn't fragile. This woman had walked into a closed auto shop in a part of town that people like her usually avoided, propositioned a stranger, and stood her ground when challenged. That took something. I'll think about it, he said. I need an answer by tomorrow morning. Then you'll have one tomorrow morning. Sienna set the envelope down on the workbench. That's yours regardless. Consider it a consultation fee. I haven't consulted anything. You listened. That's more than most people would do. She pulled out a business card, set it beside the envelope. My personal number, call before 10 a.m. She turned to leave, heels clicking back toward the door. Ethan watched her go, this strange woman who'd appeared out of nowhere with her precise words and desperate eyes, an envelope full of money that would solve half his problems in one stroke. Why me? He called out. Really? You could hire an actor, someone trained for this. Sienna paused in the doorway, hand on the frame. Didn't turn around. Because actors perform, she said quietly, and I need someone real. Then she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her, leaving only the faint scent of expensive perfume mixing with motor oil and the ghost of a decision Ethan wasn't sure he wanted to make. He stared at the envelope for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called his neighbor. Hey, Carol, I'm running late. Is Lily okay? She's fine, hun. We're making cookies. Take your time. Thanks. I'll be there in 20. He hung up. Opened the envelope. The check was real. $15,000 made out to Ethan Cole, signed by Sienna Vale in handwriting that looked like it had been taught in some expensive private school. The paper felt wrong in his oil-stained hands. Too clean. Too perfect. Too much like a solution to problems he'd been grinding himself down trying to solve. Behind on the loan? Behind on Lily's dental appointment he kept rescheduling. Behind on fixing the truck's transmission that was making concerning noises every time he shifted into third. Always behind, always catching up, always one unexpected expense away from everything falling apart. $15,000. 6 hours. Just pretend to be someone he wasn't, with someone he'd never see again, at a party for people who'd never know his name. He tucked the check back into the envelope and shoved it in his pocket. Turned off the lights. Locked up the shop. The whole drive to Carol's house he tried to convince himself he was going to say no. Tried real hard. Carol's porch light was on, warm and yellow against the October dark. Ethan could see Lily through the front window, sitting at the kitchen table with Carol's granddaughter, both of them decorating cookies with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for diffusing bombs. He knocked twice and let himself in. Lilybug, time to go. 5 more minutes. She didn't look up, tongue poking out the side of her mouth as she piped frosting onto what might have been a ghost. Or a cloud. Hard to tell. We agreed on 7:30 pickup, Carol said, appearing from the kitchen with a Tupperware container. These are for you. Don't argue. You look thin. I'm not thin. You're eating engine grease for dinner again, aren't you? It's nutritious. Carol swatted his arm with the container. She was 72 and had known him since he was Lily's age. She'd been friends with his mother, babysat him during summer vacations, attended his wedding, sat in the front row at Sarah's funeral. Carol had opinions and no qualms about sharing them. You work too hard, she said, the same thing she said every time he picked Lily up. Someone's gotta take care of himself too. You're no good to that little girl if you burn out. Ethan took the container. Cookies, probably. Or maybe her pot roast. Either way, it would be better than the protein bar he'd been planning to call dinner. Thanks, Carol. Daddy, look! Lily held up her masterpiece. Definitely a ghost. Definitely lopsided. Absolutely perfect. That's amazing, sweetheart, but we gotta get home. School tomorrow. Can I bring some for Ms. Patterson? If Carol says it's okay. Carol was already packing a smaller container. Lily bounced over, gap-toothed smile wide, frosting on her nose. She'd lost another tooth 2 days ago, and the tooth fairy, currently broke, had left an IOU note that Lily thought was hilarious, and Ethan thought was depressing. Can Maya come over this weekend? Lily asked, referring to Carol's granddaughter. Maybe. We'll see. That means no. That means we'll see. Lily made a face but accepted the cookies and grabbed her backpack. Ethan thanked Carol again, promised he'd eat real food, and herded his daughter toward the truck. She chattered the whole way home, an endless stream of consciousness about recess and a spelling test and how Brandon Thompson said girls couldn't play superhero tag, but she proved him wrong by being the best superhero, and also Brandon smelled like cheese. Ethan made appropriate listening noises while his mind churned over the envelope in his pocket. $15,000. 6 hours. One lie. Would Lily know? Could kids sense that kind of thing? Sarah always said Lily had bullshit radar, that she could tell when adults were being fake, but this wouldn't touch Lily. He'd make sure of that. She'd never even know it happened. Daddy, you're not listening. He blinked. They were parked in their driveway, engine off, Lily staring at him with those big brown eyes that saw too much for 8 years old. Sorry, Bug. Long day. What'd you say? I said, are you sad again? The question hit him sideways. I'm not sad. You get the face. What face? The one where you're thinking too much and your eyebrows do the thing. She demonstrated, scrunching her eyebrows together in a way that was both ridiculous and painfully accurate. Ethan forced his expression to relax. I'm just tired. Come on. Bath, teeth, bed. Can I have hot chocolate? It's almost 8. Please? With the little marshmallows? She deployed the eyes, the full weapons grade version. He'd built up some immunity over the years, but it was still devastatingly effective. Fine, but small cup, and you brush your teeth after. Deal! She bounded out of the truck, and Ethan followed, feeling every one of his 34 years. The house was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen that was more of a kitchenette. But it was theirs. Paid for by Sarah's life insurance, which felt wrong every time he thought about it, but was the only reason they had any stability at all. While Lily took her bath, he made hot chocolate and checked his phone. Bank balance still depressing. 3 unread emails, 2 of them bills. 1 text from his friend Marcus asking if he wanted to grab beers this weekend, and 1 business card sitting on the kitchen counter. He'd taken it out of his pocket without thinking. Sienna Vale's personal number, printed in understated gray text. He could almost hear her voice. I need someone real. What did that even mean? Real as opposed to what? Fake? Everyone was a little fake. You had to be to survive. You smiled at customers even when you wanted to tell them their car was a piece of junk and they should have come in 6 months ago. You told your kid everything was fine even when you were lying awake at night doing math that never added up right. You pretended you weren't drowning because the moment you admitted you were, everything fell apart. So what was real anyway? Daddy, I'm done! He helped Lily into pajamas, dinosaurs tonight, her current favorite, and they sat at the kitchen table with hot chocolate. She told him more about her day, about the book they were reading in class, about how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. Or maybe a race car driver. Or maybe both. You can be whatever you want, Ethan said, the same thing he always said. What did you want to be? The question caught him off guard. When? When you were my age. He thought about it. I don't know. Happy, I guess. Are you happy now? Too perceptive. Way too perceptive. Yeah, Bug, I am. Even though Mommy's gone, his throat tightened. They didn't talk about Sarah as much anymore. Not because he didn't think about her, he thought about her constantly, but because Lily was getting to the age where memories were fading, being replaced by photographs and stories. She was forgetting her mother's voice, forgetting the way Sarah laughed, and Ethan didn't know how to hold on to those things for her. I'm happy because I have you, he said. That's enough. Lily considered this, marshmallow foam on her upper lip. Okay, can we watch a show? 1 episode, then bed. They curled up on the couch, some animated thing about magical creatures and friendship. Lily fell asleep halfway through, head on his shoulder, breathing soft and steady. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. Love you, Bug, he whispered. Love you more, she mumbled, already half dreaming. Back in the kitchen, he stood at the sink and stared out the window at nothing. The business card sat on the counter. The envelope was upstairs in his dresser drawer. $15,000. Half now, half later. Money that could fix the truck, catch up the loan, get Lily those cleats and the dental appointment, and maybe, just maybe, let him breathe for 5 minutes without calculating which bill could wait another month. 6 hours. 1 dinner. 1 lie. He picked up his phone and typed out a text to the number on the card. I'll do it. Stared at it for 10 minutes, deleted it, typed it again. Deleted it again. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. I assume you're deliberating. That's fine. But if you're going to say yes, I need to know tonight. We don't have much time to prepare. Sienna Vale. Somehow she knew, or guessed, or just understood how people worked when they were backed into corners. He typed, "What kind of preparation?" 3 dots appeared immediately. Backstory. How we met. How long we've been together. The kind of details people will ask about. I don't expect you to memorize a script, but we need consistency. This feels more complicated than 6 hours of pretending. It's only complicated if you fight it. Trust me, I've done this before. Ethan stared at that last sentence. You've hired fake boyfriends before? I've navigated family politics before. Same principle. He set the phone down, picked it up, set it down again. Everything in him said this was a bad idea, everything except the practical part that knew his truck needed work, and his daughter needed a dentist, and the shop needed repairs that kept getting delayed because there was always something more urgent. His phone buzzed again. Mr. Cole, I'm not going to pressure you. This is your decision, but I will say this. I wouldn't have come to you if I had any other option. I don't ask for help easily. In fact, I never ask for help. But I'm asking now. Not because I want to, but because I have to. And I think you understand what that feels like. She was right. He did understand. The feeling of being trapped by circumstances, of needing something you couldn't provide yourself, of swallowing your pride because survival mattered more than comfort. He typed, Lily doesn't know. Under any circumstance, that's non-negotiable. Agreed. And if this goes wrong, if there's any blowback, it doesn't touch her or my business. You have my word. The word of someone hiring a fake boyfriend. Forgive me if I'm skeptical. The word of someone who's staking her entire future on this working. I have more to lose than you do, Mr. Cole. Remember that. Fair point. He typed, when? Saturday. 7 p.m. I'll send a car to pick you up. We'll meet beforehand to go over details. What do I tell people? Whatever you want. You're working late. You have an appointment. I don't care. Just be available from 5 p.m. onward. Ethan looked around his kitchen. The peeling linoleum. The fridge covered in Lily's drawings. The stack of bills on the counter he kept meaning to file. This small, imperfect life he'd built from the wreckage of loss and was trying desperately to hold together. He typed, okay, I'm in. The response came fast. Thank you. Then, don't make me regret this. Same to you, he sent back. He set the phone down and stood there in the quiet kitchen, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Outside, October wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. Normal sounds. Normal night. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Ethan went upstairs, checked on Lily one more time, still sleeping, still perfect, and got ready for bed. But sleep didn't come easy. He kept thinking about Sienna Vale and her controlled desperation, her expensive dress in his oil-stained shop, her clinical assessment of his life laid out like evidence. She'd said she needed someone real. Problem was, Ethan wasn't sure what real meant anymore. He'd been performing single fatherhood for 4 years, pretending he had it together when most days he was barely holding on. He smiled when he needed to smile, projected confidence he didn't feel, told Lily everything was fine when fine was a generous interpretation of constant, low-grade panic. So maybe he was perfect for this job after all. Maybe they were both just people pretending to be something they weren't, and for 6 hours they'd pretend together, and then they'd go back to their separate lives and separate struggles. Simple. Transactional. Temporary. He believed that right up until he fell asleep, and for about 30 seconds after he woke up. Then his phone rang at 6:47 a.m., and Sienna Vale's name appeared on the screen, and Ethan realized that nothing about this was going to be simple at all. Ethan answered on the third ring, voice still rough with sleep. Yeah? Did I wake you? Sienna didn't sound apologetic. She sounded like someone who'd been awake for hours and expected everyone else to operate on the same schedule. It's not even 7. I'm aware. I need you at my office this afternoon, 2 o'clock. We have a lot to cover and not much time. Ethan sat up, scrubbing a hand over his face. Lily was still asleep down the hall. The house was quiet except for the radiator clanking to life. I have a business to run. Close early. I can't just get, Mr. Cole, you agreed to this. That means making adjustments. I'll send the address. Don't be late. She hung up before he could argue. Ethan stared at his phone, already regretting every decision that had led to this moment. But the check was in his dresser drawer, and his bank account was still in the red, and he'd made a commitment even if that commitment was starting to feel like a noose. He got Lily up and fed, packed her lunch, drove her to school. She talked the entire way about a field trip coming up, something about a science museum, permission slip needed by Friday. Ethan made mental notes he'd probably forget and pulled up to the drop-off line. "Love you, Bug. Have a good day." "Love you more." She grabbed her backpack and was gone, absorbed into the chaos of elementary school morning routine. Ethan drove to the shop on autopilot, mind already spinning through logistics. He had 2 cars scheduled for today, both simple jobs. Oil change and a brake inspection. He could knock them out by noon if he hustled, close up, make it to wherever Sienna's office was by 2. The first car was easy, the second one wasn't. The brake pads were shot worse than the owner realized, and when Ethan pulled the wheels, he found scoring on the rotors that meant a full replacement. He called the customer, explained the situation, got approval for the extra work, which meant he wasn't done until 1:15, covered in brake dust and running behind. He cleaned up fast, changed into the least stained shirt he had in the office, and plugged the address Sienna had texted into his phone. Downtown. Of course, 30 minutes in good traffic, 45 in reality. He made it by 2:20, parking in a garage that charged more per hour than he made in half a day. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where everyone looked like they had somewhere important to be. Ethan felt immediately out of place in his work boots and jeans, but he pushed through the revolving doors anyway. The lobby had marble floors and a security desk staffed by 2 people who looked like they took their job very seriously. Ethan approached, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "I'm here to see Sienna Vale." The woman at the desk didn't look up from her computer. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yeah, Ethan Cole, 2 o'clock. Now she looked up, eyes scanning him with the kind of assessment that made him want to check if his shirt was tucked in. "ID, please." He handed over his driver's license. She studied it, typed something, made him sign in, issued a visitor badge on a lanyard. The whole process felt designed to make him feel like an intruder. 32nd floor, elevators to your right. The elevator was the kind with mirrors on every surface, which meant Ethan had to watch himself ascend 32 floors looking like someone who'd wandered in from a completely different world. His reflection wasn't encouraging. He needed a haircut, needed to shave, needed to look like someone who belonged in a building where the elevator probably cost more than his truck. The doors opened onto a reception area that was all clean lines and muted colors. A woman sat behind a curved desk, younger than Sienna, wearing a headset and a smile that looked genuine. "Mr. Cole?" "That's me." "Ms. Vale is expecting you. Follow me, please." She led him through a maze of corridors, past offices with glass walls where people in expensive suits had important-looking conversations. Everyone moved with purpose. Everyone looked like they knew exactly where they belonged. They stopped at a corner office with a view that probably cost extra. The woman knocked once and opened the door without waiting for a response. "Mr. Cole is here." "Thank you, Maya." Sienna sat behind a desk that was more sculpture than furniture, working on a laptop, barely glancing up. She wore a gray suit today, hair still pulled back, same controlled composure. But there was something different about seeing her here, in her element. At the shop, she'd seemed out of place. Here, she was absolutely in command. "You're late," she said. "Traffic." "I accounted for traffic. You should have left earlier." Maya closed the door behind her, leaving them alone. Ethan stayed standing, suddenly aware of how much space the office had and how little of it he was entitled to. "Sit," Sienna said, still not looking at him. "We have work to do." He sat in one of the chairs across from her desk. It was aggressively uncomfortable in the way expensive furniture often was, designed to make you feel like you shouldn't stay long. Sienna closed her laptop and finally gave him her full attention. Her eyes moved over him the same way the security guards had, cataloging, assessing. He could see her making calculations. "We'll need to do something about your appearance," she said. "What's wrong with my appearance?" "Nothing. If we were going to a barbecue, we're not. We're going to an event where people will scrutinize everything. Your clothes, your hair, the way you carry yourself. They'll be looking for reasons to dismiss you, and I can't afford to give them ammunition." "I clean up fine." "I'm sure you do, but fine isn't enough. I need you polished, convincing." She pulled out her phone, typed something. "I'm having a stylist meet you tomorrow. She'll handle wardrobe and grooming." "I don't need a stylist." "Yes, you do. And before you argue, remember that you're being paid very well to follow my instructions. This is one of them." Ethan bit back the response he wanted to give. She was right. He'd taken the money, deposited the check this morning, watched his account balance shift from red to black for the first time in months. He'd made a deal. Time to live with it. Fine, he said. What else? Sienna stood, came around the desk, leaned against it. Closer now, close enough that he could see she looked tired. Not just surface tired, but the kind that lived in your bones. The kind that came from carrying weight for too long. We need a story, she said. Something believable. Detailed enough to withstand questioning, but not so elaborate that we contradict ourselves. You said you'd done this before. I've navigated situations, not quite like this. She crossed her arms. Here's what I'm thinking. We met 3 months ago. Neutral location, nothing that can be easily verified or disproven. You came to pick up coffee, I was there, we started talking. You didn't know who I was. I liked that. Did I ask you out? No. I asked you. It's more believable that way. Why? Because you don't seem like someone who approaches strange women, and I seem like someone who goes after what she wants. Fair assessment. Uncomfortably accurate, actually. We've been seeing each other casually, Sienna continued. Nothing serious at first, but it's developed into something more substantial. We keep it quiet because you value your privacy and I value discretion. No social media, no public appearances. We're both adults with complicated lives trying to make something work. What about Lily? What about her? Do I mention her? Do you know about her in this story? Sienna considered. I know about her. You told me early on because you don't date anyone who can't accept that your daughter comes first. I respect that. We haven't met yet because you're protective and want to be sure about us before introducing someone new into her life. It was a good story. Almost too good. Like she'd spent time thinking about it, working out the angles. Ethan wondered how many times she'd had to construct narratives to protect herself, how many versions of reality she maintained just to survive. People are going to ask questions, he said, specific ones. What's my favorite thing about you? What do we do together? Where do I see this going? Your favorite thing is that I don't need you to be anyone other than who you are. What we do together is talk. Real conversations, not small talk. You see it going somewhere serious if we can navigate the differences in our lives. She said it all smoothly, like she'd rehearsed. Maybe she had. As for where I see it going, I'm hopeful but cautious. I've been hurt before. Have you? That's not relevant. It kind of is if I'm supposed to be your boyfriend. You're supposed to be a performance, Mr. Cole, not a therapist. The edge in her voice shut him down. He let it go, watched her move to the window and stare out at the city below. From up here, everything looked small, manageable, like problems could be solved with the right strategy and enough resources. Tell me about your family, Ethan said. The real version, not the story version. Why? Because I need to know what I'm walking into. You said there's pressure, scrutiny. I need specifics. Sienna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. My father was Marcus Vale. He built this company over 40 years, started in a garage, grew it into a defense contractor worth billions. He was brilliant, driven, absolutely ruthless when he needed to be. Were you close? No. He didn't believe in close. He believed in useful. I was useful when I proved I could handle responsibility. Otherwise, I was invisible. What about your mother? She left when I was 12. Decided being Marcus Vale's wife wasn't worth the cost. I don't blame her. Siblings? No, just me. But there's extended family. My uncle Richard, who thinks he should have inherited the company. My cousin Vanessa, whose engagement party we're attending. Her fiancé Connor, who works in finance and has all the personality of drywall. Various others who show up when there's money involved. Sounds fun. It's a nightmare. But it's my nightmare, and I'm not letting them take it from me. The fierceness in her voice caught him off guard. This wasn't about money or power or legacy. This was personal. This was survival. He understood that. He'd been fighting his own version of it for 4 years. What happens if you lose? He asked. I don't lose. But if you did? Sienna turned from the window, looked at him directly. Then I lose everything my father built, everything I've worked for. They'll install Richard as CEO, run the company into the ground within 5 years, and sell it off piece by piece. 40 years of work, gone. thousands of jobs, gone. My father was a difficult man, but he built something that mattered. I won't let them destroy it because they think I'm too emotional or unstable to lead. Are you? Unstable? No, I'm complicated. There's a difference. She moved back to her desk, pulled out a folder. Here's what you need to know about the major players. Read it tonight. Memorize names and faces. You don't need to know everyone, but you need to recognize the important ones. Ethan took the folder. It was thick, full of printed photos and biographical notes. This is a lot. You have 2 days. I have a daughter and a business. Then I suggest you prioritize effectively. The door opened without warning. Maya stepped in, looking apologetic. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have the board call in 5 minutes. Sienna checked her watch, swore under her breath. We'll continue this tomorrow. Maya will coordinate with the stylist. Be available at 9 a.m. I have to open the shop. Open it late. I have customers. Reschedule them. She was already turning back to her laptop, attention shifting. This is important, Mr. Cole. More important than oil changes. It shouldn't have stung, but it did. Ethan stood, took the folder, headed for the door. Maya gave him a sympathetic look as he passed. Don't take it personally, she said quietly. She's under a lot of stress. Seems like she's always under stress. You have no idea. Maya walked him back through the maze of corridors. In the elevator, she hit the button for the lobby and then turned to him with an expression that was harder to read. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you really dating her, or is this something else? Ethan kept his face neutral. Why would it be something else? Because I've worked for Sienna for 3 years, and I've never heard her mention anyone. Not once. Then suddenly you appear and she's rearranging her schedule, hiring stylists, acting like this matters. Maya studied him. I'm not judging. I just want to know if you're going to hurt her. I'm not going to hurt her. Good. Because she acts tough, but she's not as invulnerable as she pretends. And she's dealt with enough people using her for their own purposes. The elevator reached the lobby. Maya stepped out, but Ethan stayed holding the door. What do you think I'm using her for? I don't know yet, but whatever it is, I hope it's worth it. She walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing there with a folder full of strangers and the uncomfortable feeling that he'd just been warned off by someone who saw more than he wanted her to see. The drive home gave him too much time to think. About Sienna and her controlled desperation, about the way she'd dismissed his work like it didn't matter, about the fact that he was already in deeper than he'd planned. This was supposed to be simple. Show up, smile, collect the second half of his payment, done. But nothing about Sienna Vale felt simple. He picked up Lily from after-school care, listened to her talk about her day, made dinner that was barely edible, but she ate it anyway because she was 8 and resilient. After she went to bed, he opened the folder. The first photo was of Richard Vale, Sienna's uncle. Late 50s, silver hair, smile that didn't reach his eyes. According to the notes, he'd been COO under Marcus Vale, expected to take over after his brother's death, furious when the will named Sienna instead. Currently serving as chairman of the board, which apparently meant he had significant influence over company decisions. Next was Vanessa Vale, the cousin getting engaged. 29, blonde, worked in marketing for the company. Her fiancé Connor looked exactly like Sienna had described. Generic, forgettable, probably very good at spreadsheets. There were others. Board members, executives, family friends. All of them smiling in their professional photos. All of them hiding whatever knives they carried behind their backs. Ethan studied each face, tried to commit names to memory. This was the world Sienna lived in. These were the people she fought against every day, the ones who wanted to see her fail so they could take what she'd earned. His phone buzzed, text from Sienna. The stylist's name is Angela. She'll meet you at your shop at 9 a.m. Don't make this difficult. He typed back, You ever say please? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Please don't make this difficult. Better. See you tomorrow. He set the phone down and went back to the folder. There was a photo of Marcus Vale at the back, an older man with Sienna's eyes and none of her warmth. He looked exactly like the kind of person who'd build an empire and forget to build a family. The caption underneath was brief. Founder and former CEO, Vale Industries. Deceased April 2025. Ethan wondered what kind of man inspired such clinical notation from his own daughter. wondered what it cost Sienna to stand in his shadow and claim space he'd never willingly given her. The next morning came too fast. Ethan opened the shop at 8, called his 2 scheduled appointments, and pushed them to afternoon. Both customers were annoyed but understanding. Small business meant flexibility, even when you didn't want to be flexible. Angela arrived at 9 sharp, driving a luxury sedan that looked out of place in his parking lot. She was 50-ish, dressed in all black, carrying what looked like a mobile styling kit, and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and judged most of it. "Ethan Cole?" "That's me." She walked a slow circle around him, the way someone might assess a used car. "We have work to do." "I'm not that bad. You're a project, but an interesting one. Come on, let's see what we're dealing with." She set up in the shop's tiny bathroom, which suddenly felt even smaller with both of them in it. Angela studied his face in the fluorescent light, made thoughtful noises, pulled out scissors. "Wait," Ethan said. "What are you doing?" "Haircut. You need one." "I was going to get one this weekend." "I'm doing it now. Sit." There was no arguing with her. Ethan sat on the closed toilet lid while Angela cut his hair with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Pieces fell around him more than he expected. "Not too short," he said. "I know what I'm doing." Snip, snip. Sienna said, "Natural but polished. You've got good bone structure. We just need to clean it up." 20 minutes later, she handed him a mirror. He barely recognized himself. The haircut was shorter but not severe, styled in a way that looked effortless but probably wasn't. He looked older, more put together, like someone who might actually belong at a fancy dinner party. "Now the clothes," Angela said. She'd brought options. 3 suits, multiple shirts, ties and colors he'd never wear. She had him try on combinations, adjusted fits, made notes on her phone. The whole process felt invasive and necessary in equal measure. "This one," she finally decided, holding up a charcoal suit with a white shirt. "Classic. Doesn't try too hard. You'll need new shoes, too." "I have shoes." "Work boots don't count. I'll have a pair delivered." She packed up her kit, gave him one more assessing look. "You'll do. Try to sleep more between now and Saturday. The bags under your eyes aren't doing you any favors." "I'll add it to my list." "And smile more. You have a nice smile when you use it." "I smile plenty." "Not like you mean it." She paused at the door. "Whatever Sienna's paying you, it's not enough. These people will eat you alive if you show weakness. I'm tougher than I look. Everyone thinks that. Very few people are right." She left and Ethan stood in his bathroom looking at himself in the mirror. Different hair, better clothes waiting in garment bags. Same tired eyes, same worried expression he couldn't quite shake. His phone rang. Sienna again. "Angela finished?" "Yeah, she's terrifying." "She's effective. Can you meet me tonight, 7 o'clock? There's a restaurant downtown, Meridian. We need to be seen together before Saturday." "Why?" "Because if we show up at the party and no one's heard of you, it looks suspicious. We need a foundation, a pattern, something that suggests this is real." Ethan thought about his evening. Lily had soccer practice until 6. He'd need to arrange for Carol to pick her up, watch her until he got back. Another favor, another imposition. "I'll be there," he said. "Good. Dress well. This is a public appearance." "You mean like a date?" "I mean like the beginning of a narrative." She paused. "And Ethan, try to look like you enjoy my company." The call ended. Ethan stared at his reflection, at this polished version of himself that didn't quite feel real, and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. Meridian was the kind of restaurant that didn't have prices on the menu. Ethan knew this because he'd looked it up online and felt mild panic at the descriptions alone. He wore the new suit, the new shoes that had been delivered that afternoon, felt like he was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Sienna was already there when he arrived, sitting at a table near the window where people could see her. She wore a deep blue dress, hair down for the first time, softening her features. She looked up when he approached and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or approval. "You clean up well," she said. "Angela's good at her job. That's why I hired her. Sit." He sat. A waiter materialized immediately, offering wine, water, menus bound in leather. Ethan felt out of his depth and tried not to show it. Sienna ordered for both of them without asking, which should have annoyed him but mostly felt like relief. "This feels ridiculous," he said quietly. "It's necessary. People I know will be here tonight. They'll see us together. Tomorrow, someone will mention it to someone else, and by Saturday, the story will have circulated enough to seem established. You've really thought this through. I think everything through. It's how I survive. The wine arrived. Sienna picked up her glass, and Ethan followed suit. They toasted to nothing, drank in silence. Across the restaurant, he could see people glancing over, registering Sienna's presence, wondering who he was. "Tell me about your wife," Sienna said suddenly. Ethan nearly choked on his wine. "What?" "Your wife, Sarah. If we're supposed to be in a relationship, I should know something about your past. And people will ask. That's not—" He stopped, regrouped. "That's personal. So is pretending to date someone. Yet here we are." She had a point. He set down his glass, tried to figure out how to summarize 4 years of grief into dinner conversation. "We met in college," he said finally. "She was studying nursing. I was doing general courses, trying to figure out what I wanted. We got married young, probably too young. Had Lily right away. It was good. Hard, but good. And then? Cancer. Ovarian. Diagnosed when Lily was 4. She fought for 8 months. Died the week before Lily turned 5. Sienna's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything." "No, it doesn't." She took another sip of wine. "Is that why you said yes to this arrangement, the money?" "Mostly." "What's the other part?" Ethan considered lying, considered deflecting, but there was something about the way she asked, direct and unflinching, that demanded honesty. "Because I'm tired," he said. "Tired of struggling. Tired of making decisions based on what I can afford instead of what's right. Tired of watching my daughter grow up, understanding that we have to be careful with money. $15,000 means breathing room. Means I can fix the truck and pay the dentist, and maybe take Lily somewhere nice for once without calculating whether we can afford dinner afterward. That's practical. That's survival." "Yes," Sienna said quietly. "It is." The food arrived. Ethan didn't recognize half of what was on his plate, but ate it anyway because it was excellent, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd had a meal that wasn't microwaved or picked up from a drive-thru. They talked carefully around each other, practicing their story, filling in details that would make them seem like a real couple. Partway through dinner, a woman approached their table, older, elegant, wearing jewelry that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. "Sienna, darling, I thought that was you." Sienna's entire demeanor shifted. The careful control became warm openness, her smile reaching her eyes in a way Ethan hadn't seen before. Performance. This was all performance. "Catherine, how lovely to see you." "And who is this?" Catherine's eyes landed on Ethan with undisguised curiosity. "This is Ethan Cole." "Ethan, Catherine Brennan. She's on the board." Ethan stood, shook her hand. "Pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure's mine. I don't think I've heard Sienna mention you." "We've been keeping things quiet," Sienna said smoothly. "You know how I value privacy." "Of course. But you must bring him to Vanessa's party. I'm sure everyone would love to meet him." "We'll be there." Catherine's smile was sharp. "Wonderful. I'll let you two get back to your dinner. Enjoy the rest of your evening." She walked away, and Sienna's warmth evaporated instantly. She picked up her wine glass, drained half of it. "That's what Saturday will be like," she said. "Constant scrutiny disguised as pleasantries, everyone assessing, judging, looking for weaknesses." She seemed nice enough. Catherine Brennan has spent 30 years climbing social ladders and collecting information she can use later. Nice is a tool she deploys when convenient. "You don't trust anyone, do you?" "I trust people to act in their own self-interest." "That's usually accurate." Ethan leaned back, studied her. "What about me? What's my self-interest?" "Money, security, providing for your daughter, all reasonable motivations." "And yours?" "Survival, power, proving I deserve what I've earned." She met his eyes. Not that different when you think about it. Maybe she was right. Maybe they were both just people trying to protect what mattered, using whatever tools they had available. The methods were different, but the core motivation was the same. They finished dinner. Sienna paid, brushing off his attempt to contribute. Outside, the October air was cold, city lights reflecting off windows and wet pavement. A car was waiting for her, sleek and black with a driver who appeared the moment they exited. "Do you need a ride?" Sienna asked. "I drove." "Of course you did." She hesitated, then extended her hand. "Thank you for tonight. You did well." He shook her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. "See you Saturday." "Saturday," she confirmed. She got into the car and was gone, leaving Ethan standing on the sidewalk in his expensive suit, feeling like he'd just participated in something he didn't fully understand. He walked back to where he'd parked his truck, the contrast almost funny. From Meridian to a 15-year-old Ford with a questionable transmission. From Sienna Vale's world back to his own. The drive home was quiet. He picked up Lily from Carol's, carried his sleepy daughter into the house, tucked her into bed. Back in his own room, he hung up the suit carefully, put the new shoes in his closet. They looked wrong next to his work boots and sneakers, like props from someone else's life. His phone buzzed. Message from Maya, Sienna's assistant. Meeting tomorrow at her office, 10 a.m., final preparation before Saturday. He confirmed and set his phone down. 2 more days. Then 6 hours at a party pretending to be someone he wasn't, and this would all be over. He could take the second payment, fix his problems, go back to normal. Except normal was starting to feel like something he'd already left behind, and he wasn't sure how to get back to it. The next morning's meeting was different. Sienna seemed tense, distracted. Maya was there too, along with someone Sienna introduced as her lawyer, a severe woman named Patricia who looked like she'd never smiled in her life. "We need to discuss contingencies," Patricia said without preamble. "What happens if this arrangement becomes public knowledge?" "It won't," Sienna said. "But if it does, we need to be prepared. Mr. Cole, you understand that you're bound by the confidentiality agreement you signed?" Ethan blinked. "I didn't sign anything?" "Yes, you did. When you deposited the check, the terms were outlined in the memo line." "That's not legally binding," Ethan said. "Actually, it is. If you'd read the documentation I included with the payment." He hadn't. He'd deposited the check and tried not to think too hard about what it meant. Apparently that was a mistake. "What exactly am I bound to?" he asked carefully. Patricia slid a document across the table. Non-disclosure, non-disparagement. Agreement not to discuss the nature of your arrangement with Ms. Vale, publicly or privately, in perpetuity. Violation results in financial penalties and potential legal action. Ethan read through the document, anger building. "This is insane." "This is protection," Sienna said, "for both of us. If word gets out that I hired someone to pose as my boyfriend, it destroys everything we're trying to accomplish. I need assurance that you won't talk." "I agreed to help you. I didn't agree to be legally muzzled." "You agreed when you took the money." "Bullshit. You buried this in fine print and hoped I wouldn't notice." "I hoped you'd read what you were signing." They stared at each other across the table, and Ethan could see the calculation in her eyes. She'd planned this. Set it up so he was locked in before he fully understood the terms. It was smart. It was also manipulative as hell. "You don't trust me," he said flatly. "I don't trust anyone. I told you that." "Yeah, you did." He stood, grabbed the document. "I'll have my own lawyer look at this." "You don't have a lawyer." "Then I'll find one." He walked out before she could respond, Maya following him into the hallway. "Wait," she called. "Just wait." Ethan stopped, turned. Maya looked genuinely distressed, which was more emotion than he'd seen from anyone else in this building. "She's not trying to screw you over," Maya said. "She's just protecting herself. You have to understand, she's been burned before. By people she trusted, family, business partners, even friends. She doesn't take risks anymore. This whole thing is a risk." "Exactly, which is why she's terrified." Maya glanced back toward the office. "She doesn't show it, but she is. This party, this performance, if it goes wrong, she loses everything. So she's controlling what she can control, and that includes making sure you can't hurt her later." Ethan's anger cooled slightly. He understood fear, understood the instinct to protect yourself when the stakes were high. But understanding didn't mean accepting. "Tell her I'll be there Saturday," he said, "but we're going to have a conversation about boundaries after this is done." "Fair enough." He left the building, sat in his truck for 10 minutes just breathing. This was more complicated than he'd wanted it to be. More invasive, more real. He'd thought he could keep distance, treat this like a job, collect his pay and walk away clean. But Sienna Vale wasn't someone you walked away from cleanly. She was sharp edges and hidden depths, and he was starting to realize that 6 hours in her world might leave marks that lasted a lot longer. Saturday arrived with the kind of gray sky that threatened rain but wouldn't commit. Ethan spent the morning pretending everything was normal, making pancakes with Lily, letting her beat him at checkers, avoiding the garment bag hanging in his bedroom like an accusation.
"You look nervous," Lily said, studying him across the kitchen table. "I'm not nervous."
"You're doing the eyebrow thing again." He forced his face to relax. "I have a work thing tonight. That's all." "What kind of work thing?" "Boring adult stuff. You're staying at Carol's, remember? She said you could help make lasagna." Lily's face brightened. Carol's lasagna was legendary in their small orbit of life. "Can I spend the night?"
"It'll be late when I'm done." "Yeah, you can spend the night."
"Yes!"
She pumped her fist, already mentally planning her evening. No idea that her father was about to walk into a world that had nothing to do with their life. No idea he'd taken money to lie to people he'd never met about feelings he didn't have. Good. That's how it should stay.
At 4:30, Ethan showered and put on the suit. The transformation still felt wrong, like wearing a costume. He stared at himself in the mirror, practicing the kind of smile that didn't look forced. Failed at it repeatedly. His phone buzzed. Message from Sienna. "Car will be there at 5:15. Be ready." He texted back. "I'll be outside." No pleasantries. They hadn't spoken since he'd walked out of her office 2 days ago. The lawyer's document sat unsigned in his truck's glove compartment. He'd read it 3 times, each time getting angrier at the clauses designed to protect her while leaving him exposed. But he hadn't backed out. The money was already spent in his head, allocated to bills and repairs and the growing list of things Lily needed. He dropped Lily at Carol's at 5, kissed her goodbye, promised to pick her up in the morning. Carol took one look at him in the suit and whistled. "Well, don't you look fancy? Where's this work thing?" "Just a dinner. Business networking." "In a designer suit?" "It's not designer." "Honey, I've been alive 72 years. I know designer when I see it." She patted his cheek. "You be careful. People who wear suits like that usually want something." "I'll be fine." That's what everyone says before they're not fine. The car arrived exactly at 5:15. Black sedan, tinted windows, driver who didn't introduce himself. Ethan climbed in the back, feeling ridiculous. The interior smelled like leather and money, so clean it felt sterile. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city, heading into suburbs that got progressively more expensive. The houses grew larger, set further back from the road, hidden behind gates and landscaping that cost more than Ethan made in a year. By the time they turned onto a private drive, he'd lost track of how far they were from anything resembling normal. The Vale estate wasn't a house. It was a statement. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within like a jewelry box. Cars lined the circular drive, each one worth more than his shop. People in evening wear drifted toward the entrance, laughing, talking, belonging. The driver pulled up to the front. "Miss Vale asked that you wait here. She'll meet you before you go in." Ethan nodded, stayed in the car, watched the parade of wealth, and watched his stomach tie itself into knots. This was insane. He didn't belong here. These people would see through him in seconds. Know he was a fraud. Know he was... The car door opened. Sienna slid in beside him, and for a second, Ethan forgot how to breathe. She wore black tonight, something simple that probably cost a fortune. Her hair swept up to expose her neck. Diamond earrings caught the light. She looked like she'd been born for this world, carved from the same expensive stone as the house behind them. "You came," she said. "I said I would." People say a lot of things. She studied him, those sharp eyes cataloging details. "You look good. Nervous, but good." "I'm not nervous." "Your hands are shaking." He looked down. She was right. He shoved his hands in his pockets. "This is a lot bigger than I expected." "It's a Vale family event." "Bigger is the only option." She reached into her purse, pulled out a small box. "Here, put this on." Inside was a watch. Not flashy, but clearly expensive. The kind of thing someone like Sienna would give someone she was dating. "I can't accept this. It's part of the costume. You're supposed to be dating me. I would have given you something by now." She took it from the box, fastened it around his wrist. Her fingers were cold, movements efficient. "There. Now you look the part." "Sienna, I need you to understand something before we go in there." She turned to face him fully.
and he could see the tension she was carrying, wound tight beneath the polished surface. These people are going to try to break us. They'll ask questions designed to trip you up. They'll watch how we interact, looking for inconsistencies. My Uncle Richard will be particularly aggressive. He wants me to fail, and if you give him ammunition, he'll use it. You've mentioned. I'm mentioning it again because I need you to be perfect tonight. Not good. Perfect. Can you do that? Ethan thought about the bills sitting on his kitchen counter, thought about Lily and her gap-toothed smile and the future he was trying to build for her, thought about the second half of the payment that would only come if he made it through this evening intact. Yeah, he said. I can do that. Sienna held his gaze for another moment, searching for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then let's go. They exited the car together. Sienna took his arm, her hand light on his elbow, and they walked toward the entrance like they'd done this 100 times. The performance had begun. Inside was overwhelming. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums. Staff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Conversations echoed off high ceilings, layers of polite laughter and carefully modulated voices. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread about lives Ethan would never understand. Smile, Sienna murmured. You look like you're walking to your execution. Feels like it. Pretend you're somewhere else. Somewhere comfortable. I'm comfortable at my shop covered in grease. Then pretend this is covered in very expensive grease. Despite everything, he almost laughed. Sienna's mouth quirked just slightly. Maybe she'd meant it as a joke. Hard to tell with her. They moved deeper into the crowd. People greeted Sienna with varying degrees of warmth, their eyes sliding to Ethan with undisguised curiosity. She introduced him the same way each time, smooth and casual. This is Ethan Cole. We've been seeing each other. Each introduction felt like a small lie stacking on top of larger ones, building a tower that would eventually collapse. Sienna, darling. A woman in red descended on them, all air kisses and perfume. Vanessa Vale, the cousin whose engagement they were supposedly celebrating. She looked exactly like her photo, blonde and polished and performatively excited. Vanessa, congratulations on the engagement. Thank you. And you must be the mysterious Ethan I've heard whispers about. Vanessa extended her hand, eyes sharp despite the warm smile. I'm so glad you could join us. Wouldn't miss it, Ethan said, shaking her hand. How did you two meet again? Sienna's been so secretive. Coffee shop, Sienna said smoothly. 3 months ago. He didn't know who I was. How refreshing. Everyone always knows who we are. Vanessa looped her arm through Ethan's other elbow, effectively trapping him between the two women. You'll have to tell me what it's like dating someone as intense as my cousin. I imagine it's quite the experience. It has its moments, Ethan said carefully. I bet. Sienna, Uncle Richard was asking about you. Something about quarterly reports? I'm sure he was. Sienna's voice cooled several degrees. Where is he? Library, last I saw, holding court as usual. Vanessa released Ethan's arm, patted his shoulder. Don't let him intimidate you. He tries that with everyone. She floated off to greet other guests, leaving them alone in a sea of people who all seemed to know each other. Sienna's hand tightened on his arm. We need to talk to Richard sooner rather than later. Get it over with. What's he going to ask me? Everything. Your background, your intentions, your financial situation. He'll try to make you feel small. Don't let him. I'm a mechanic at a family party full of millionaires. I already feel small. You're a business owner supporting a child on your own while maintaining your integrity. That's worth more than any trust fund. She said it matter-of-factly, like it was obvious, like she believed it. Come on. They navigated through the crowd, Sienna nodding to people but not stopping, moving with purpose. The library was off the main hall, a room lined floor to ceiling with books that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. A group of men stood near the fireplace, drinks in hand, talking in the low voices of people accustomed to power. Richard Vale stood at the center. He looked exactly like his photo, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing authority like a second skin. He saw them approaching and his expression shifted into something that might have been a smile on someone else. Sienna, I was wondering when you'd make an appearance. Richard, you're looking well. Thriving, actually. Business is good. The company's stock is up despite the uncertainty around leadership transitions.
He let that hang in the air, a casual barb disguised as conversation. Then his attention shifted to Ethan. "And you must be the mechanic." "Ethan Cole." Ethan extended his hand. Richard's shake was firm, aggressive, the kind meant to establish dominance. "Richard Vale. I'm chairman of the board at Vale Industries, among other things." He released Ethan's hand, took a sip of his drink. "Sienna tells me you two have been seeing each other. That must be quite the adjustment for both of you." "We're managing," Ethan said. "I'm sure. Tell me, what exactly does a mechanic find to discuss with someone running a multi-billion-dollar aerospace company? The finer points of engine maintenance?" "Richard," Sienna said, voice sharp, "it's a genuine question. I'm curious about the foundation of this relationship." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You seem like a practical man, Ethan. What do you get out of this arrangement?" The word choice wasn't accidental. Arrangement. Like he knew. Like he could see right through them. "I get to spend time with someone interesting," Ethan said evenly. "That's usually enough." "Interesting." "Yes, Sienna's certainly that." Richard swirled his drink, ice clinking against crystal. "Though I have to wonder about the timing. My niece has been single for years, married to her work, and suddenly she appears at a family event with someone none of us have heard of. It's almost like she's trying to prove something." "Maybe I just wanted to bring someone I cared about to a family celebration," Sienna said. "That's allowed, isn't it?" "Of course, if it's genuine." Richard's gaze moved between them, calculating. "How did you two meet?" "The story seems to change depending on who's telling it." "Coffee shop," Ethan said. 3 months ago. She was on her phone, I was waiting for my order, we started talking." "And you had no idea who she was?" "I knew her name. Didn't connect it to Vale Industries until later." "How convenient. And what was your first date?" Ethan glanced at Sienna. They'd rehearsed this. "Dinner. Small Italian place near the waterfront. She liked the lasagna." "I did," Sienna confirmed. "The wine was terrible, but the company was good." "Charming." Richard didn't sound charmed. "And your daughter, Ethan. Lily, is it? How does she feel about Mommy's replacement?" The question hit like a punch. Ethan's jaw tightened, anger flaring hot and immediate. Beside him, Sienna went very still. "My daughter doesn't need a replacement," Ethan said quietly. "And she's not part of this conversation." "Sensitive subject, I understand. Losing a spouse is difficult." Richard's sympathy was as fake as everything else about this exchange. "But surely you can see how this looks. Widowed father, struggling business, suddenly dating a woman worth hundreds of millions. It raises questions about motivation." "Richard, that's enough," Sienna said. "I'm simply looking out for family interests. If this relationship is serious, we have a right to understand it, especially given the provisions in your father's will regarding your personal stability." "My personal life has nothing to do with the will." "Doesn't it? The behavioral clauses are quite specific about demonstrating sound judgment. Dating someone who appears to be— Be very careful how you finish that sentence," Ethan interrupted. His voice was level, controlled, but there was steel underneath. "You don't know me. You don't know anything about me except what you've decided based on my job and my bank account, so maybe save the judgment until you've earned the right to make it." Silence dropped over the group. The other men who'd been pretending not to listen were definitely listening now. Richard's expression hardened. "I see Sienna's found someone with a backbone. That's new." "Richard, I'm simply stating facts. Your track record with relationships isn't exactly reassuring. The last man you brought to a family event was that venture capitalist who turned out to be embezzling from his own fund." "That was 6 years ago, and you know it," Sienna said tightly. "Time doesn't erase patterns. You have a habit of seeing what you want to see in people instead of what's actually there." Richard finished his drink, set the glass down with deliberate care. "I hope for your sake this one's different, for the company's sake too. We can't afford instability at the top." He walked away, the other men following like satellites around a sun. Sienna stood frozen, her face carefully blank, but Ethan could feel the tension radiating off her. "That went well," he said quietly. "He's trying to rattle us. It's working. Don't let him see that." She turned, headed toward a different part of the house. Ethan followed, weaving through guests who all seemed to be watching them now, whispering behind raised hands. The performance had been judged and found wanting. They ended up in a side room, quieter, overlooking gardens lit by strategically placed lights. Sienna stood at the window, arms crossed, shoulders tight. "I'm sorry," she said without turning around. "He had no right to bring up your daughter." "No, he didn't. Richard's a bastard, but he's a strategic bastard. He knew exactly what button to push." "Yeah, well, it worked." Ethan loosened his tie, suddenly feeling like the suit was suffocating him. "This was a mistake. I don't belong here." "You're doing fine. I'm doing terrible. Everyone in that room knows I'm not one of them. They can smell it." "Good." Sienna turned to face him. "Let them smell it. Let them see that I chose someone real instead of another corporate drone who'd say whatever I wanted to hear. That's the whole point. The point is I'm a prop in your family drama. The point is you're helping me survive." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, just enough to reveal the strain underneath. "I know this is uncomfortable. I know it's not what you signed up for. But I need you to hold it together for a few more hours. Can you do that?" Ethan wanted to say no. Wanted to walk out, call a cab, go home to his normal life where people didn't weaponize personal tragedy in casual conversation. But he looked at Sienna standing there in her expensive dress with her careful composure cracking at the edges, and he saw something he recognized. Someone trying desperately not to break in front of people who wanted to see her shatter. "Yeah," he said. "I can do that." Relief flickered across her face. "Thank you." The door burst open. Maya rushed in, face flushed, phone in hand. She looked panicked in a way that immediately set off alarms. "Sienna, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The board. There's an emergency meeting called for Monday morning. Richard just sent out the notification. He's pushing for a vote." "A vote on what?" Maya's eyes flicked to Ethan, uncertain. Sienna caught the look. "He's fine." "What vote?" "Leadership review. He's claiming there's been irregular financial activity in the last quarter. Unauthorized transfers, missing documentation. He's saying you've been making reckless decisions that put the company at risk." The color drained from Sienna's face. "That's impossible. Every transfer has been authorized. Every decision documented." "I know. But he has board members convinced otherwise. He's calling for a formal investigation, and if it finds evidence of mismanagement, they can vote to remove you as CEO, pending resolution." "He's staging a coup," Sienna said flatly, "using fabricated evidence." "It looks convincing. He's been building a case for weeks. Maybe months." Maya's voice was shaking. "Sienna, this is bad. If they vote Monday and it passes, you're suspended immediately. Richard becomes acting CEO." Sienna turned back to the window, hands gripping the sill. Ethan could see her mind working, running scenarios, calculating options. When she spoke, her voice was eerily calm. "Get Patricia on the phone. I need every document related to financial decisions from the last 6 months. Every email, every approval, everything. We have until Monday to prove this is fabricated. That's tomorrow. We'll figure it out." "Where's Richard now?" "Still in the library. He's celebrating with his allies." "Of course he is." Sienna's laugh was bitter. "He planned this. Waited until tonight, when I'm distracted. When I brought someone new into the family dynamic. He knew I'd be off balance." "What do you want me to do?" Maya asked. "Start pulling files. I'll be there in 10 minutes. We're leaving." Maya nodded and left. The room fell silent except for the muffled sounds of the party continuing outside, oblivious. Sienna stood at the window like a statue, processing, planning. "You should go," she said quietly. "The driver can take you home. I'll have the rest of your payment transferred Monday." "You're dismissing me?" "I'm releasing you from an obligation that just became significantly more complicated. You did what I asked. This isn't your problem." Ethan should have taken the out, should have said thank you and left and gone back to his life. Instead, he heard himself say, "What do you need?" "Excuse me?" "You said you need to prove the financial stuff is fabricated. What do you need to do that?" Sienna turned, studied him like she was seeing him for the first time. "Why are you asking?" "Because you're about to walk into a fight, and you look like you're planning to do it alone. That seems stupid." "I have Maya. I have my lawyer. You have employees who are probably terrified they're about to lose their jobs. That's not the same as having someone who doesn't have skin in the game." He moved closer. "Look, I don't understand corporate politics. I don't know anything about board votes or financial transfers, but I know what it looks like when someone's been backed into a corner, and I know what happens when you try to fight your way out without help. This isn't your fight. You paid me to be your boyfriend for the night. Technically, I'm still on the clock. So what does a boyfriend do when his girlfriend's family tries to destroy her career? Something flickered in Sienna's eyes. Not quite hope, but maybe the shadow of it. You don't owe me anything beyond what we agreed. I know. This could take all night, possibly longer. I already told my neighbor I'd be late. Sienna was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone, typed something, and pocketed it again. The driver will take you to my office. Maya's already heading there. I need to stay here another 30 minutes or Richard will know something's wrong. Make an appearance, play the concerned cousin, then leave. What am I supposed to do at your office? Maya will explain. She'll give you access to the files we need to review. It's thousands of pages of financial records, transaction histories, email chains. We need to find inconsistencies, anything that proves Richard's documentation has been altered or taken out of context. I'm a mechanic, not an accountant. You're someone who can read and compare documents. That's all I need right now. She headed for the door, paused. Ethan, thank you for not leaving. Don't thank me yet. I might be completely useless. We'll see. She left to rejoin the party, armor back in place, performing normalcy while her world threatened to collapse. Ethan stood alone in the side room, wondering what the hell he'd just volunteered for. His phone buzzed, text from Maya with an address. The driver was already waiting outside. Ethan walked through the party like he was moving through water, everything distant and strange. He found the car, climbed in, gave the driver Maya's address. They pulled away from the estate, leaving behind the lights and laughter and people who had no idea their comfortable world was about to implode. The office building was dark except for the top floor. Maya met him in the lobby, looking frazzled but focused. You didn't have to come, she said. Sienna seems to think I can help. She's desperate. We're all desperate. Maya led him to the elevator. Richard's been planning this for months. We should have seen it coming. How do you fabricate financial evidence? You take real transactions and remove context. You find patterns that look suspicious without explanation. You build a narrative that sounds convincing to people who want to believe it. The elevator doors opened. He's good at this. He's had years of practice. The office looked different at night. Emptier. The ambient noise of business replaced by silence and the hum of computers. Maya led him to a conference room where multiple laptops were already set up, surrounded by printed documents in neat stacks. These are the files Richard submitted to the board, she said, gesturing to one stack. These are our actual records. We need to find the discrepancies. Ethan stared at the mountain of paper. This is going to take forever. We have until tomorrow night. Monday morning, the board votes. If we can't prove this is fabricated by then, Sienna's out. And if she's out, then everything she's built falls apart. Richard dismantles the company piece by piece, sells it off, and thousands of people lose their jobs. Maya sat down, opened a laptop. So we work fast. Ethan took off his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and sat down at the other laptop. The first document was a financial transfer report, dense with numbers and corporate language he barely understood. But Maya walked him through it, showing him how to cross-reference dates and amounts, how to spot alterations. They worked. Hours blurred together. Coffee appeared at some point, brought by a security guard who didn't ask questions. Documents piled up. Some matched, some didn't. They cataloged every discrepancy, building a case one piece of paper at a time. Around midnight, Sienna arrived. She looked exhausted, the polished facade finally cracking. She'd changed into slacks and a blouse, makeup gone, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, more real. Progress? She asked. Some, Maya said. We've found 6 major inconsistencies so far. Transfers Richard's report claims were unauthorized, but we have email approvals for. Payments, he says, are missing documentation that we have full records of. It's not enough. We need a pattern. Proof that he's systematically altering data. We're working on it. Sienna picked up one of the reports, scanned it, set it down. Her hands were shaking slightly. Ethan noticed because he'd started cataloging her tells. The small ways she revealed stress, The way she pressed her fingers together when thinking. The tightness around her eyes when she was holding back emotion. "You should eat something," he said. "I'm fine. You're running on adrenaline. That doesn't last." He stood, headed for the small kitchen area he'd seen earlier, found vending machines, bought whatever looked remotely nutritious, brought it back. "Eat." Sienna stared at the granola bar like it was an alien object. Then she opened it, took a bite, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. "Thank you." "Don't mention it." They worked through the night. Ethan lost track of time, lost in the rhythm of comparing documents, highlighting discrepancies, building a case. At some point, he realized he'd moved past the performance, past the pretense of being Sienna's boyfriend. This was real. This mattered. These people were fighting for something they believed in, and he'd somehow become part of it. Around 4 a.m., Maya made a sound, not quite a shout, but close. "Found it!" Sienna was at her side instantly. "What?" "The pattern. Look." Maya pulled up 2 documents side by side. Richard's report shows this transfer is going to an unauthorized offshore account, but the original documentation shows it went to our supplier in Taiwan. Same amount, same date, different destination. He altered the destination. And if he altered this one, Maya started pulling up more files, cross-referencing frantically. He could have altered all of them. Same method. Change the destination, remove the approval documentation, make it look like unauthorized transfers. Can we prove it's altered? The metadata should show modification dates. If his documents were edited after the fact, it'll be in the file properties. They checked. The modification dates didn't match. Richard's supposedly official documents had been edited weeks after the original transactions, during the time he was building his case. "That's it," Sienna breathed. "That's the proof." "It's enough to question his credibility," Maya said. "Whether it's enough to stop the vote, it has to be. Get Patricia on the phone. We need this documented, witnessed, ready to present Monday morning." Maya made the call. Sienna sat back, pressed her hands to her face, and for the first time since Ethan met her, she looked like she might actually break. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." "You're not out yet," Ethan said. "No, but we have a chance." She lowered her hands, looked at him with something that might have been gratitude. "You didn't have to stay. You could have walked away hours ago." "Yeah, well, I was curious how it ended." "It's not ended yet." "But you're not going down without a fight. That's something." Sienna smiled, small and genuine. "No, I'm definitely not going down without a fight." Dawn crept through the office windows while they waited for Patricia to arrive. Ethan's eyes burned from staring at screens all night, his back ached from the conference room chairs, and he desperately needed a shower. Beside him, Maya had fallen asleep with her head on the table, one hand still clutching a pen. Sienna stood at the window, watching the city wake up, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "You should go home," she said without turning around. "Get some sleep. You've done more than enough." "What about you?" "I'll sleep when this is over." "That's not how bodies work." "I'm aware." She pressed her forehead against the window. "I keep thinking about what Richard said, about my pattern of seeing what I want to see instead of what's actually there. He was trying to get under your skin. He succeeded because he's not entirely wrong." She turned, leaned against the window frame. The early light made her look fragile in a way the office fluorescence never did. "The venture capitalist he mentioned? Thomas? I dated him for 8 months, introduced him to the family, brought him to company events. Didn't see that he was embezzling until the FBI showed up at my door asking questions. That wasn't your fault." "Wasn't it?" "I'm supposed to be good at reading people. It's literally part of my job. But I missed every sign because I wanted to believe someone actually cared about me and not what I could give them." Ethan stood, his knees protesting after hours of sitting, walked over to where she stood. "You hired me to pretend to be your boyfriend. Pretty sure that means you learned something from the Thomas situation. It means I stopped trusting anyone to be genuine." "Can't say I blame you." Sienna looked at him, really looked, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Why did you stay last night?" "The real reason." "I told you. You told me the polite version. I want the truth." Ethan thought about lying, about giving her something comfortable and easy. But they'd spent the night fighting side by side, and that seemed to earn honesty. "Because I know what it's like to have people assume you're failing," he said. "After Sarah died, everyone watched me. watched how I parented, how I ran the business, waiting for me to fall apart. The sympathetic looks, the offers of help that felt like judgment, like they'd already decided I couldn't handle it alone. Could you? Barely. But I did. And every time someone acted surprised that I was managing, it felt like they'd wanted me to fail just so their assumptions would be proven right. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Last night, watching Richard try to tear you down, I recognized that look. The one that says they've already decided you're not good enough. Made me angry. So you stayed because you were angry. I stayed because nobody should have to fight that fight alone. Something shifted in Sienna's expression. The careful control slipped, and underneath was exhaustion and gratitude and something more complicated that Ethan couldn't quite name. Thank you, she said quietly. The moment broke when Patricia arrived, all business in a suit that suggested she'd been awake for hours despite the early time. She set her briefcase on the conference table with a decisive thunk that woke Maya with a start. Show me what you found. They walked her through it. The altered documents, the modified metadata, the pattern of systematic manipulation. Patricia took notes, asked sharp questions, occasionally nodded. When they finished, she sat back and steepled her fingers. It's good. Not ironclad, but good. Richard will argue the modifications were administrative corrections, clerical updates. We'll need to prove intent. How? Sienna asked. By demonstrating he had access to the original files and deliberately changed them to support his narrative. Maya, can you pull server logs showing who accessed these files and when? Yeah, give me 20 minutes. Maya disappeared into her office. Patricia started organizing the evidence they'd compiled into something presentable. Sienna paced, that restless energy returning now that they had direction. Ethan watched them work, feeling increasingly out of place. This was their world, their expertise. He was just the mechanic who'd wandered into corporate warfare. His phone buzzed. Text from Carol. Lily's asking when you're picking her up. Everything okay? He'd completely lost track of time. It was Sunday morning. He was supposed to have picked up his daughter hours ago. I have to go, he said abruptly. Sienna looked up from the documents. What's wrong? My daughter, I was supposed to pick her up this morning. I'm already late. Go. We can handle this from here. Ethan grabbed his jacket, headed for the door, then stopped. Turned back. The board meeting tomorrow. What time? 9 a.m. Why? Just curious. He wasn't sure why he was asking, wasn't sure why it mattered, but something about walking away now felt wrong. Good luck. Ethan. Sienna crossed to him, stood close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. What you did last night, staying and helping, that wasn't part of our arrangement. I won't forget it. You're welcome. She reached up, straightened his collar even though it didn't need straightening. The gesture was automatic, intimate in a way that caught them both off guard. Her hand lingered for a second too long before she pulled back. Go take care of your daughter, she said. The drive home was a blur. Ethan's brain felt like static, exhausted and wired at the same time. He stopped at Carol's house, found Lily in the backyard playing with Maya's granddaughter, completely oblivious to the fact that her father had just spent the night in a different universe. Daddy! She ran over, all joy and energy. You're late! I know, Bug. I'm sorry. Work ran long. Carol appeared on the porch, gave him a look that said they'd be having a conversation later. She's been fine. Fed her breakfast, let her watch cartoons. You look terrible. Feel terrible. Thanks for keeping her. Any time. You know that. Carol studied him with those sharp old eyes that missed nothing. This work thing, it's not going to be a regular occurrence, is it? No, it's done after tomorrow. Good. Because that little girl needs her father present, not running around doing whatever had you out all night in a fancy suit. I know, it won't happen again. He collected Lily and her overnight bag, drove them home through Sunday morning traffic. Lily chattered about her sleepover, about the cookies they made, about how Carol let her stay up past bedtime watching a movie. Normal kid stuff, safe kid stuff. The kind of life he'd been trying to protect by taking Sienna's money in the first place. At home, he made lunch while Lily sprawled on the couch with a book. His phone sat on the counter, silent. He kept expecting updates from Sienna or Maya, some indication of how the preparation was going. Nothing came. Around 3 p.m., he gave up trying to stay awake and told Lily he needed a nap. But it's daytime, she protested. Daddy's tired. Can you play in your room for a bit? I guess. She looked concerned in that way kids do when they sense something's off. Are you sick? Just tired, bug. I'll be fine after I sleep. He crashed hard, dreamless and total. When he woke, it was dark outside and Lily was shaking his shoulder. Daddy, there's a lady at the door. Ethan sat up, disoriented, checked his phone. 8:30 p.m. He'd slept for 5 hours. At the door, through the front window, he could see a familiar figure. Sienna. He opened the door. She stood on his porch, looking completely out of place in slacks and a sweater, holding a folder and wearing an expression he couldn't quite read. What are you doing here? We need to talk. Can I come in? Ethan glanced back at Lily, who was watching from the hallway with undisguised curiosity. This was exactly what he'd wanted to avoid. Sienna seeing his home, meeting his daughter, crossing the careful line he'd drawn between the arrangement and his real life. This isn't a good time. It's important. Something in her voice made him step aside. Sienna entered, took in the small living room with the worn furniture and Lily's drawings on the walls. Her eyes landed on Lily, and for a second both of them just stared at each other. Hi, Lily said finally. I'm Lily. I'm Sienna. I work with your father. He's a mechanic. You don't look like a mechanic. I'm not. I'm a different kind of colleague. Sienna's voice had softened in a way Ethan had never heard before. It's nice to meet you. You too. Are you staying for dinner? Daddy made spaghetti, but it's kind of bad. Lily, Ethan said. It is. You always burn the garlic. Sienna smiled, genuine and warm. I appreciate the honesty, but I'm not staying for dinner. I just need to talk to your dad for a few minutes. Is that okay? Lily shrugged. I guess. I'll be in my room if you need me, Daddy. She disappeared down the hall, and Ethan turned to Sienna with barely controlled frustration. You shouldn't be here. I know, I'm sorry, but we have a problem, and I need your help. She held up the folder. Richard knows. About us. About the arrangement. The bottom dropped out of Ethan's stomach. How? I don't know yet, but he's planning to use it tomorrow at the board meeting. Expose the whole thing. Discredit me completely. She set the folder on the coffee table. Patricia thinks he hired an investigator, someone who followed the paper trail from my account to yours. The check. The stylist, the restaurant. He has documentation proving we didn't actually meet 3 months ago, that I paid you to pose as my boyfriend. Ethan sat down heavily on the couch. This was exactly what he'd feared from the beginning, the lie unraveling, pulling them both down. So what do we do? We have 2 options. Sienna sat across from him, elbows on her knees. Option 1, I go into that meeting tomorrow and admit everything. Take full responsibility, say you were an innocent party I manipulated. You walk away clean, I take the fall. And option 2, we go in together and tell them the truth before Richard can weaponize it. Control the narrative instead of letting him control it. The truth being that you hired me. The truth being that I was desperate and made a questionable decision, but that everything we uncovered about Richard's manipulation is still valid. We shift the focus from my deception to his. Ethan ran his hands through his hair. That's a hell of a gamble. It is, but it's the only play we have. She leaned forward. I'm not asking you to do this. You can walk away right now. Say I tricked you. Say you had no idea about the corporate implications and you're done. The confidentiality agreement won't hold up if Richard's already exposing everything. What happens to you if I walk? I lose. Richard wins. The company gets torn apart and sold for scrap. And if we go in together, maybe we lose anyway, but at least we go down fighting. She met his eyes. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know I've pulled you into something way bigger than a simple arrangement, and I'm sorry, but I'm asking anyway because I'm out of options, and you're the only person who's been straight with me through this entire mess. From down the hall, Ethan could hear Lily singing to herself, some song from school. His daughter, his real life, the thing he'd been trying to protect by taking this job in the first place. Getting deeper into Sienna's world meant more risk, more exposure, more chances for everything to blow up. But walking away meant letting Richard win through deception, meant Sienna facing the fallout alone, meant all the work they'd done last night counted for nothing. What time tomorrow? He asked. 9 a.m. I'll be there. Relief washed over Sienna's face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could still go sideways in about 100 different ways. I know, but at least we'll go sideways together. She stood to leave. Ethan walked her to the door, hyper-aware of how small his house must seem to her, how different from the world she inhabited. She paused on the porch, looked back at him. Your daughter seems wonderful. She is. You're doing a good job with her, in case no one tells you that. They don't usually, but thanks. Sienna nodded, started down the steps, then turned back. Ethan, when this is over, regardless of how it goes, I want you to know that hiring you was the best decision I've made in a long time. Not because of the performance, because you reminded me what it's like to have someone actually give a damn. She left before he could respond, climbing into her car and disappearing into the October night. Ethan stood on his porch for a long time, trying to process what had just happened, what he'd just agreed to. Is she your girlfriend? He turned. Lily stood in the doorway, watching him with those two perceptive eyes. No, Bug. She's just someone I'm helping with work stuff. She's pretty, I guess. And she looked at you weird. What kind of weird? Lily scrunched up her face, thinking. Like how Mommy used to look at you sometimes, when she thought you weren't watching. The observation hit harder than it should have. It's not like that, Lily. Okay. She didn't sound convinced. Are you going to be gone again tomorrow? Yeah, but just for a few hours. Carol's going to pick you up from school. Is this the last time, the work thing? Yeah, Bug. This is the last time. Promise? He crouched down to her level. I promise. After tomorrow, things go back to normal. Lily threw her arms around his neck, held tight. I like normal. Me too. He got her ready for bed, read her a story, kissed her goodnight. Then he sat at the kitchen table with the folder Sienna had left, reading through Richard's supposed evidence. It was damning. Bank records, receipts, testimony from the stylist Angela about being hired to make Ethan look the part. Every piece of their arrangement laid out in black and white. The only thing Richard didn't have was context, didn't have the why, and that's where their counter-narrative would live. Ethan's phone rang close to midnight. Sienna. You should be sleeping, he said. So should you. But we both know neither of us will. She sounded tired. I wanted to go over the plan for tomorrow. I figured we'd just tell the truth and hope for the best. That's optimistic. We need to be strategic. Patricia will present our evidence against Richard first. The altered documents, the metadata, the server logs showing he accessed and modified files. That establishes his credibility is already compromised. And then he drops the bomb about us. Right, at which point we don't deny it. We acknowledge the arrangement but explain the context. I was facing family pressure to appear stable. You needed money for legitimate reasons. We made a mutually beneficial agreement that had nothing to do with the company or my ability to lead it. You really think they'll buy that? I think they'll understand desperation. Most of them have done questionable things to maintain their positions. We're just being honest about it. She paused. The key is presenting you as a real person, not a paid actor. That's why I need you to speak for yourself tomorrow. About what? About why you said yes. About your life, your daughter, the struggles that made $15,000 meaningful. Give them something human to connect with instead of just seeing you as evidence of my poor judgment. I'm not good at speeches. You don't need to be good. You need to be honest. Can you do that? Ethan thought about standing in front of a boardroom full of people like Richard Vale, explaining his life to strangers who'd already judged him. Everything in him recoiled from the idea. Yeah, he said. I can do that. Good. Wear the suit. Look professional. And Ethan, whatever happens tomorrow, thank you for trying. We haven't lost yet. No, we haven't. Morning came too fast. Ethan dropped Lily at school, watching her run toward her classroom with her backpack bouncing. Normal Monday morning, except nothing about today was normal. He drove to Vale Industries, parked in visitor parking, rode the elevator up to the 30th floor. Maya met him, looking like she'd slept about as much as he had. Conference room C. Patricia's already setting up. Sienna's with the board chairman explaining why she's requested time before the vote. How's she doing? Holding it together? Barely. Maya handed him a visitor badge. For what it's worth, I think you're both crazy for doing this. Yeah, well, crazy seems to be the theme lately. Conference room C had a massive table surrounded by leather chairs. Patricia stood at one end with a laptop and projector, organizing slides. Sienna sat near the middle, posture perfect, face carefully neutral. She looked up when Ethan entered, and something in her expression eased. "You came," said I would. "People say a lot of things. You mentioned that before." She almost smiled. Almost. Board members started filtering in at 8:50. Ethan recognized some from the files he'd memorized. Catherine Brennan from the restaurant, other executives whose names he'd read but faces he'd never seen. They took seats around the table, curious and speculative, clearly aware something unusual was happening. Richard entered last, flanked by two men Ethan didn't recognize. He looked confident, almost smug, like someone holding all the winning cards. His eyes landed on Ethan with cold recognition. "Mr. Cole, what a surprise to see you here." "Richard," Sienna said coolly, "shall we begin?" The board chairman, an older man named William, called the meeting to order. As requested, we're giving Ms. Vale 30 minutes to present information relevant to this morning's vote. Ms. Vale, the floor is yours. Sienna stood, nodded to Patricia. The first slide appeared on the screen. "Thank you all for being here. I know the circumstances are unusual. This weekend, Board Chairman Richard Vale submitted documentation alleging financial mismanagement and unauthorized transactions during my tenure as CEO. Before we proceed to any vote based on those allegations, I want to address them directly." She walked them through it. The altered documents, the metadata proving modification dates, the server logs showing Richard had accessed the original files and changed them systematically to support his narrative. Patricia displayed each piece of evidence methodically, building the case. Richard's confidence started to crack. Just slightly, just enough. "These are serious accusations," William said. "Richard, do you have a response?" "The modifications were administrative corrections," Richard said smoothly, "standard practice when consolidating quarterly reports." "Ms. Vale is trying to deflect from her own poor judgment by attacking mine." "Poor judgment regarding what specifically?" Sienna asked. Richard's smile was sharp. "Regarding your personal life and how it impacts your professional credibility." Here it came. Ethan felt his pulse kick up. "I was planning to address this after the vote," Richard continued. "But since we're being transparent, let's discuss your boyfriend, Mr. Cole, the mechanic you've been parading around as evidence of your stability." "What about him?" "He's an employee, not a romantic partner. You paid him $15,000 to pose as your boyfriend at family events. You hired a stylist to make him presentable. You fabricated an entire relationship to convince this board and our family that you're mentally stable enough to lead this company." Silence dropped over the room. Every eye turned to Sienna. She didn't flinch. "That's true," she said. The admission rippled through the board members. Richard looked triumphant. "So you admit to—" "I admit to making a desperate decision when faced with family pressure that had nothing to do with my professional capabilities," Sienna interrupted. "My father's will contains behavioral clauses that Richard and others have been weaponizing, trying to prove I'm too emotional, too unstable, too unmarried to lead effectively. So yes, I hired someone to pose as my boyfriend for one family event to relieve that pressure. It was a personal decision that impacted no one in this room." "It demonstrates poor judgment," Richard pressed. "It demonstrates that I'm human, that I was tired of being judged for being single and focused on work instead of relationships, that I made an imperfect choice when backed into a corner." She looked around the table. "How many people in this room have never made a questionable decision under pressure? Anyone?" No one raised their hand. "The difference is I'm being honest about mine," Sienna continued, "which is more than I can say for Richard and his fabricated financial evidence. The evidence is altered. We've proven it. What we haven't proven yet is your motive. But I have a theory. Would you like to hear it?" Richard's face darkened. "You've wanted my position since the day my father died," Sienna said, voice steady and cold. "You believed you deserved it more than I did because you'd been with the company longer, because you're a man, because in your mind, I'm just Marcus Vale's daughter playing at CEO. So you've spent the last 7 months trying to undermine me, first through family pressure, then through fabricated evidence. And when neither worked, you hired an investigator to dig into my personal life, hoping to find ammunition." She picked up a folder from the table. "This is that investigator's report, the one Richard planned to use this morning. It details the arrangement with Ethan, but it also contains something Richard probably didn't expect. She pulled out a document, held it up. An invoice. From the investigator to Richard, dated 2 weeks before my father died. The room went very quiet.
You hired an investigator while my father was still alive, Sienna said. You were already planning to challenge my succession before there was anything to challenge, which suggests this was never about my capabilities or judgment. It was about removing any obstacle to your ambition. Richard stood abruptly. That invoice is taken out of context. Is it? Because I'd love to hear the context that makes hiring an investigator to dig up dirt on your niece while your brother was dying anything other than calculating betrayal. You have no right to I have every right. This is my company. My father built it, and he chose me to lead it. Not you, me. And I'll be damned if I let you destroy it because your ego can't handle that choice. Ethan had never heard her voice like this. Raw and furious and absolutely done with pretending. She was magnificent. William cleared his throat. I think we need a recess. Richard, you'll need to address these allegations about the investigator and the timeline. Sienna, we'll need time to review all the evidence you've presented. We'll reconvene in 1 hour.
The board members filed out, talking in low voices. Richard stormed past without looking at anyone. Maya appeared, touched Sienna's shoulder briefly, then disappeared again. Only Ethan and Sienna remained in the conference room. She stood at the window, shoulders tight, breathing carefully controlled. You okay? He asked. I have no idea. She turned to face him. I should have asked you before exposing everything. I'm sorry, You did what you had to do. Did I? She laughed, sharp and bitter. I threw you into the spotlight, made your private struggle public fodder for a corporate power play. That's not nothing. It's also not the worst thing that's happened to me. Ethan moved closer. You stood up there and told the truth. That takes guts, especially in a room full of people waiting for you to fail. They're still waiting. This isn't over. No, but you're not backing down. That counts for something. Sienna studied him with those sharp eyes that always seemed to see more than he wanted to reveal. Why are you really here, Ethan? And don't say it's about the money. You could have walked away a dozen times and saved yourself this mess. Maybe I'm tired of watching people get torn down for being human. Or maybe you care more than you want to admit. The observation hung in the air between them. Ethan didn't confirm or deny it. Wasn't sure he could, even if he wanted to. Before either could say more, Patricia stuck her head in. They're ready to reconvene. The board filtered back in, Richard noticeably absent. William took his seat at the head of the table, expression unreadable. We've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties, he said, and we've had a frank discussion with Richard about the investigator and the timeline of his allegations. After deliberation, we've reached a decision. Sienna's hand found the edge of the table, gripping hard enough that her knuckles went white. The board finds the evidence of document alteration compelling and troubling. We also find the timeline of Richard's investigation inappropriate at best and malicious at worst. Therefore, we are suspending Richard from his position as board chairman pending a full independent investigation. Relief flickered across Sienna's face, but William wasn't done. However, we also find merit in the concern that Ms. Vale's judgment in personal matters raises questions about decision-making under pressure. While we are not removing her as CEO, we are implementing a 6-month oversight period during which major company decisions will require board approval. That's unacceptable, Sienna said. That's the compromise, William replied. You keep your position. You prove your capabilities without interference from family politics. But we need assurance that personal pressures won't cloud professional judgment. 6 months. Then we revisit. Sienna looked like she wanted to argue. Patricia caught her eye, gave a small shake of her head. Sometimes survival meant accepting terms that weren't perfect. Fine, Sienna said. 6 months. Good. This meeting is adjourned. Everyone filed out except Sienna, Ethan, and Patricia. The lawyer packed up her materials efficiently. That could have gone much worse, Patricia said. It could have gone better. Take the win, Sienna. You're still CEO. Richard's suspended. You have breathing room to actually lead without him undermining you at every turn. She snapped her briefcase shut. I'll start drafting the oversight protocols. Try to get some sleep. She left. The conference room felt huge and empty, just the two of them in the aftermath of a battle that wasn't quite won, but wasn't quite lost either. 6 months, Sienna said quietly. 6 months of proving myself to people who've already decided I need proving. Better than losing it all. Is it? Sometimes I wonder if fighting this hard is worth it. If I should just let Richard have the company and walk away. You don't mean that, don't I? She sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted beyond measure. I'm so tired, Ethan. Tired of fighting, tired of being judged, tired of every decision being scrutinized for evidence that I'm not good enough. You are good enough. How do you know? Because you're still here. Because you didn't back down when it would have been easier to fold. Because you stood in front of that board and told the truth, even when it cost you. He sat across from her. That's not weakness. That's strength. Sienna looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something he didn't expect. She reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you for being here, for all of this. Her hand was warm in his. Ethan should have pulled away, should have maintained the professional distance they'd started with. Instead, he squeezed back. You're welcome. They sat like that for a while, connected across a conference table in an empty room, two people from different worlds who'd stumbled into something neither of them quite understood. Outside, the city continued its Monday routine, oblivious to the small war that had just been fought 30 stories above. Finally, Sienna withdrew her hand. I should let you go. I'm sure you have a business to run, a daughter to pick up from school. Yeah. Ethan stood. What about you? I have a company to save, apparently for 6 more months. You'll make it. We'll see. He headed for the door, stopped, turned back. Sienna? When this started, you said you needed someone real. I think you proved today you're pretty real yourself. She smiled, small and genuine. High praise from someone who's seen me at my worst. I've seen you fight like hell for something you believe in. That's not your worst. That's your best. He left before she could respond, rode the elevator down to the lobby, walked out into October sunshine that felt wrong after the artificial lighting of the conference room. His truck sat in visitor parking, old and familiar and completely out of place among the luxury cars. He sat behind the wheel for a long time, not starting the engine, just processing. The arrangement was over. He'd fulfilled his part. The second payment would hit his account, and he'd go back to his life, and Sienna would go back to hers. And this strange interlude would become a story he'd maybe tell someday when someone asked if he'd ever done anything completely insane. Except it didn't feel over. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. His phone buzzed. Text from Sienna. The payment will transfer this afternoon. Thank you again for everything. He stared at the message, cursor blinking. He could type, "You're welcome," and close this chapter cleanly, could take his money and move on. Instead, he typed, "Let me know if you need anything. I mean it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I will. Ethan started his truck and drove home to pick up his daughter, leaving behind the glass towers and corporate battles and complicated woman who'd pulled him into her world and somehow made him want to stay. 3 weeks passed before Ethan heard from Sienna again. The second payment had arrived as promised, hitting his account the same afternoon as the board meeting. He'd paid off the loan, fixed the truck's transmission, taken Lily to the dentist, and bought her new cleats and a winter coat she actually needed. For the first time in 4 years, he looked at his bank balance and didn't feel the immediate spike of anxiety. Life went back to normal. Oil changes and brake jobs and picking Lily up from school, soccer practice on Saturdays, dinners that were still barely edible but getting better. The expensive suit hung in his closet like a costume from someone else's life, and he told himself that's exactly what it was, except he kept checking his phone. Kept wondering how the 6-month oversight period was going, whether Richard had tried anything else, whether Sienna was managing the pressure or drowning in it. He'd scroll past news articles about Vail Industries, scanning for her name, telling himself it was idle curiosity and knowing it was something more. Carol noticed. She always noticed. "You've been distracted," she said one afternoon when he picked up Lily from her house. "That work thing still bothering you?" "It's done?" "Doesn't seem done the way you keep staring at your phone." "I'm not, honey. I've known you since you were in diapers. I know what pining looks like." "I'm not pining." "Then what do you call it?" Ethan didn't have an answer. Couldn't explain that he'd spent 6 days in someone's world and come away feeling like his own life had shifted slightly off its axis. couldn't articulate the strange emptiness that came from going back to normal when normal suddenly felt insufficient. "It's complicated," he said finally. "It always is." Carol patted his arm. "But complicated doesn't mean impossible. Just means you have to figure out what you actually want instead of what's easy. What he wanted. That was the problem. He wanted his simple life with Lily, the predictability and safety of routine. But he also wanted whatever had sparked between him and Sienna in those long nights reviewing documents, in the quiet moments when her armor slipped and he saw the person underneath. He wanted both. And that felt greedy. The call came on a Tuesday evening. Ethan was closing up the shop, grease under his fingernails, everything as it should be. His phone rang with Sienna's name, and his heart did something stupid. "Hello." "Ethan, it's Sienna." Like he didn't know, like her voice hadn't been playing in his head for 3 weeks. "Is this a bad time?" "No, just finishing up at the shop. What's going on?" Silence on the other end. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that meant someone was trying to figure out how to say something difficult. "I need a favor," she said finally. "And I have no right to ask it after everything, but I'm asking anyway." "What kind of favor?" "The personal kind. Not business, not performance, just..." She exhaled. "Can we meet?" "Somewhere neutral. I'll buy you coffee." "You don't have to buy me coffee." "I want to. Tomorrow?" "There's a place near your shop, Brewers on 5th Street. 1 o'clock?" Ethan should have said no. Should have maintained the clean break, kept the boundaries clear. Instead, he said, "Yeah, I'll be there." "Thank you." She hung up before he could ask what this was about. Ethan stood in his empty shop, phone in hand, wondering what he was walking into this time. Brewer's was a coffee shop that tried too hard to be rustic, all reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs. Ethan arrived exactly at 1, spotted Sienna at a corner table. She looked different. Hair down, jeans and a sweater instead of her usual armor of professional clothing. She looked younger, more approachable, more like someone he might have actually met in a coffee shop under different circumstances. She stood when he approached, and there was an awkward moment where neither of them knew if they should hug or shake hands or just sit down. They settled on sitting. "Thanks for coming," she said. "You were mysterious, hard to resist." "Was I? I thought I was direct." "Direct about being mysterious, maybe." She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. They ordered coffee from a server who clearly recognized Sienna and was trying not to stare at Ethan. Small towns. Even the coffee shops had gossip networks. "How's Lily?" Sienna asked when they were alone again. "Good. Great, actually. She made the advanced reading group at school. Pretty proud of her." "You should be. She seemed bright when I met her." "She is. Too bright sometimes. Sees things I wish she didn't." "Like what?" "Like when her dad's struggling, or distracted, or thinking about things that don't involve engine repair." He took a sip of coffee that was too hot. "She asked about you, the lady who came to the house." "What did you tell her?" "That you were someone I helped with a work project, which is technically true." "Technically." Sienna wrapped her hands around her cup. "I wanted to see you because I owe you an apology. A real one, not the corporate version I gave at the board meeting." "You don't owe me anything." "I do. I pulled you into my mess, used you to solve a problem that wasn't yours, put you in a position where your personal life became public ammunition. That wasn't fair." "I knew what I was signing up for." "Did you? Because I'm not sure I did." She met his eyes. "I thought I was hiring someone to play a role. I didn't expect you to actually care. To stay when things got complicated. To defend me in front of people who'd already decided I was guilty. Why wouldn't I? Because you had no reason to. The money was already yours. The arrangement was technically over. You could have walked away clean. But I didn't." "No, you didn't. And I need to know why." The question hung between them. Ethan could give her something easy, something comfortable, or he could tell the truth and see where it landed. Because somewhere between the fake dinner and the all-night document review, it stopped feeling fake, he said. "You stopped being the desperate rich woman in my shop and became someone I actually gave a damn about. And I don't know when that happened or how to undo it, but there it is." Sienna stared at him. "That's terrifyingly honest." "You asked." "I did." She took a breath. "What if I told you I've been thinking about you constantly for 3 weeks? That I've started 3 different texts and deleted them all because I didn't know what to say? That I drove past your shop twice last week just to see if your truck was there? I'd say that sounds like someone who's interested in more than a business arrangement. It does, doesn't it? She laughed, shaky. I don't do this, Ethan. I don't get involved with people. I don't let anyone close enough to matter, but somehow you got close anyway, and now I don't know what to do about it. What do you want to do about it? I want to see where this goes. The real version, not the performance. No contracts, no arrangements. Just two people figuring out if there's something worth building. Ethan's chest tightened. This was what he'd wanted without admitting he wanted it. But wanting and having were different things, and there were complications he couldn't ignore. My life is here, he said carefully. The shop, Lily, this town. I can't be flying to corporate events or navigating your family politics on a regular basis. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking if you'd be willing to let me be part of your life. Here, in whatever capacity works for both of us. You'd do that? Come here? I'd try. I can't promise it'll be perfect. I have obligations, board meetings, travel, but I can promise I'll try. If you're willing to try with me. Ethan thought about Lily, about what it would mean to bring someone new into their carefully constructed world. Thought about the risk of caring about someone who lived in a different universe, whose problems were measured in millions in corporate coups. Thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Then he thought about Sienna standing in that boardroom, telling the truth when lies would have been easier. Thought about the way she'd looked at Lily with genuine warmth. Thought about the way she'd apologized without making excuses. Okay, he said. Let's try. Relief and terror crossed her face in equal measure. Really? Really? But we do this slowly. Lily comes first, always. I wouldn't expect anything else. And if it doesn't work, if the logistics are too complicated or our worlds don't fit together, we walk away as friends. No drama, no burning bridges. Agreed. She reached across the table, took his hand. I can't believe you're actually saying yes. I can't believe I am either. They sat there holding hands across a coffee shop table, and for the first time since this whole mess started, it felt simple. Not easy, but simple. Two people taking a chance on something uncertain because the alternative was walking away from what might be real. So what now? Ethan asked. Now we figure it out as we go. Maybe dinner, a real one, where we're not performing for anyone. I'd like that. Saturday? I can drive up. We could go somewhere Lily might enjoy too. Make it casual. She'd probably like that. Fair warning, she's going to ask 1,000 questions. I can handle questions. Sienna squeezed his hand. I'm more worried about the answer when she asks if I'm your girlfriend. What should I tell her? The truth, that we're seeing where this goes, that it's new and we're figuring it out together. She's 8. She's going to want a simpler answer. Then tell her yes, if you're comfortable with that. Ethan considered it. The weight of that word, girlfriend, applied to someone like Sienna Vale. A month ago, it would have seemed absurd. Now it felt almost natural. Yeah, he said. I'm comfortable with that. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everything feel possible. Ethan cleaned the house, made Lily help, tried not to be obvious about the fact that he was nervous. She noticed anyway. Is the pretty lady coming over? She asked while they wiped down the kitchen table. Her name's Sienna, and yes, she's coming for dinner. Is she your girlfriend now? Maybe. We're figuring it out. Lily considered this, scrubbing at a spot with intense focus. Does that mean she's going to be around a lot? I don't know yet. Maybe. Would that bother you? I don't know either. She looked up at him with those serious eyes. I liked her when she came before. She talked to me like a person, not like a little kid. That was nice. She is nice. But what if she doesn't like me when she gets to know me better? Or what if she decides being with us is too boring? Ethan crouched down to Lily's level. First of all, you're impossible not to like. Second, anyone who thinks being with us is boring isn't worth keeping around anyway. But what if you like her and she leaves and you're sad again? The question cut deep. Lily rarely talked about the year after Sarah died, when Ethan had been a ghost of himself trying to hold everything together. But she remembered. Kids always remembered. That's a risk, he admitted, but so is never trying. Sometimes you have to take a chance on people even when you're scared they might leave.
Like soccer tryouts? Exactly like soccer tryouts. Okay. She went back to cleaning. But if she's mean to you, I'm going to tell her to leave, even if she's pretty. Deal. Sienna arrived at 6, right on time. She'd driven herself this time, parking her sedan next to his truck like they belonged in the same driveway. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, carrying a bag that turned out to contain a board game and cookies from an expensive bakery. Hi, she said, when Ethan opened the door. Hi.
They stood there for a second, that same awkwardness from the coffee shop returning. Then Lily appeared, breaking the moment. Hi, Sienna. Daddy said you're maybe his girlfriend now. Lily, Ethan said. What? You said we're figuring it out. Sienna laughed, genuine and warm. We are figuring it out. Is that okay with you? Lily shrugged. I guess.
Are those cookies? They are. I wasn't sure what kind you liked, so I got several. Can we have them after dinner? That's up to your dad. We'll see, Ethan said, which made Lily roll her eyes but accept the answer. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Ethan had attempted lasagna based on Carol's recipe and only partially burned it. They ate at the kitchen table with Lily doing most of the talking, telling Sienna about school and soccer and the science project she was planning. Sienna listened like Lily's story about photosynthesis was the most interesting thing she'd heard all week. After dinner, they played the board game Sienna had brought. It involved building railroads across the country, strategy Ethan barely understood, but Lily picked up instantly. Sienna didn't condescend or let Lily win easily. She played seriously, complimenting good moves and pointing out strategic errors with the same directness she probably used in boardrooms. Lily loved it. By 8:30, Lily was yawning despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Ethan sent her to get ready for bed, promised she could stay up 15 more minutes if she brushed her teeth and put on pajamas immediately. Alone in the living room, Sienna helped clear the game pieces. She's wonderful. She is. Takes after her mother that way. I see a lot of you in her too. The way she thinks things through, the way she asks direct questions. That's terrifying. That's honest, which is good. Sienna set the game box aside. This was nice, really nice. Yeah, it was. Lily reappeared in dinosaur pajamas, demanding her promised 15 minutes. Ethan read her a chapter from the book they were working through while Sienna sat in the armchair, listening quietly. When time was up, Lily hugged him goodnight, then surprised them both by hugging Sienna too. You can come back, Lily announced. If you want. I'd like that, Sienna said. Ethan tucked Lily in, came back to find Sienna standing by the window, looking at the framed photos on the wall. Most were of Lily at various ages. A few included Sarah, frozen in happier times. She was beautiful, Sienna said, nodding to a wedding photo. She was. Inside and out. Do you still miss her? Every day, but it's different now. Less like drowning, more like an ache that's just part of the landscape. He moved to stand beside her. Does that bother you, that I'm not over it? No. It would bother me if you were completely over losing someone you loved. That would mean you didn't actually love her. Sienna turned to face him. I don't want to replace her. I couldn't even if I tried. I just want to be someone new in your life. If there's room, there's room. She smiled, reached up to touch his face. The gesture was tentative, asking permission. Ethan covered her hand with his, leaned into the touch. I should go, she said quietly. It's late and I have a long drive back. You could stay, guest room, or the couch. No pressure, just practical. I probably shouldn't, not yet. We're taking this slow, remember? Right, slow. But neither of them moved. They stood there in the dim living room, close enough to feel the heat between them, both knowing that slow was getting harder to maintain. One question, Sienna said. When you think about the future now, what do you see? Ethan thought about it. Honestly, I see my shop, Lily, growing up, maybe taking her to college someday. Same things I've been seeing for years. Do you see me in that future? Starting to. You keep showing up in the mental picture, which is new. Good new or complicated new? Both. But I'm learning to be okay with complicated. Me too. She kissed him then, soft and careful, testing the waters. Ethan kissed back, one hand settling at her waist, the other cupping her face. It was gentle and charged at the same time, full of promise and possibility.
When they pulled apart, Sienna was smiling. Definitely worth the complication. Definitely. She left a few minutes later with promises to call tomorrow to figure out when they could see each other again. Ethan watched her drive away, then went inside to his quiet house that somehow felt less empty than it had an hour ago. The next 3 months unfolded in a pattern of visits and phone calls and slow integration. Sienna came up most weekends, fitting herself into their routine. She learned Lily's soccer schedule, showed up to games wearing Vail Industries sweatshirts and cheering from the sidelines. She started keeping a change of clothes at Ethan's house, then a toothbrush, then a drawer. Ethan met her world too, slowly. Dinners with Maya, who approved wholeheartedly and wasn't subtle about it. A company holiday party where he met executives who treated him with cautious curiosity instead of Richard's open disdain. Richard himself had resigned from the board entirely after the investigation found evidence of systematic document manipulation. Last Ethan heard, he was pursuing business ventures in Europe and not speaking to anyone in the Vail family. The 6-month oversight period ended with the board voting unanimously to remove the restrictions. Sienna had proven herself capable, strategic, and stable. She'd grown the company's contracts, improved employee retention, and managed to do it all while navigating a new relationship and family dynamics that were slowly thawing. Vanessa had apologized eventually, admitted she'd been complicit in Richard's pressure campaign because she thought it was what family loyalty required. She and Sienna were working on rebuilding trust. It was slow, awkward, but happening. On a Saturday in February, Ethan took Sienna to the cemetery. He hadn't planned it, but she'd asked about Sarah and he'd found himself driving there with her in the passenger seat. They stood in front of Sarah's headstone, February wind cutting through their coats. Ethan hadn't been here in months. Used to come every week, then every month, then just on birthdays and anniversaries. The grief had changed shape, become something he carried instead of something that carried him. "I wanted to tell you something," he said quietly. Not sure if he was talking to Sarah, or to Sienna, or to both. "I'm happy again. Not the same kind of happy as before, but real, and I wanted you to know that." He looked at the headstone. "I hope that's okay." Sienna took his hand, squeezed gently. Didn't say anything because there wasn't anything to say. Just stood with him in the cold while he said goodbye to one version of his life and acknowledged another was beginning. On the drive back, Sienna said, "Thank you for bringing me here. Seemed important. You're part of my life now. She was too. Felt wrong to keep those pieces separate. I understand that. More than you know." She looked out the window at the gray February landscape. "My father and I never made peace before he died. I think about that sometimes. All the things I wanted to say and didn't, all the ways we failed each other. You're doing right by his company. That counts for something. Maybe, or maybe I'm just trying to prove to a dead man that I was worth choosing." She turned back to him. "That's the thing about complicated relationships. They don't get less complicated just because someone dies. You just lose the chance to fix them. Is that what you want? To fix it? I want to stop letting his opinion define me. I want to lead because I'm good at it, not because I'm trying to prove something to someone who can't even see it." She managed a small smile. "Getting there, slowly. Slowly seems to be our speed." "It does, doesn't it?" Spring came gradually, melting the winter freeze. Lily turned 9 and they celebrated with a party at the house where Sienna helped bake a cake that was only slightly lopsided. The shop had its best quarter in years. Sienna's company landed a major new defense contract that would sustain operations for the next decade. Life wasn't perfect. Sienna still worked too much, still carried stress in her shoulders that no amount of massage could entirely remove. Ethan still worried about money even when the accounts were healthy, still woke up sometimes reaching for someone who wasn't there anymore. Lily had moments of missing her mother so acutely that nothing helped except sitting with her while she cried. But there were good moments too. Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers, and Lily's cartoons playing in the background. Sienna teaching Lily about business concepts while they did homework together. Date nights that were sometimes fancy restaurants and sometimes just takeout on the couch. The slow building of something that felt sustainable. On a Sunday evening in late May, they sat on Ethan's back porch while Lily practiced soccer drills in the yard. The sun hung low, painting everything gold. "I was thinking," Sienna said carefully, "dangerous. Hush. I was thinking about selling my condo. Ethan looked at her. Where would you live? I was hoping maybe here, if there's room, if that's not too fast or too much. You want to move in? I want to stop driving an hour each way every weekend. I want to be here for dinner more than 3 nights a week. I want to wake up next to you more often than not. She met his eyes. But only if you want that too, and only if Lily's comfortable with it. Ethan thought about his small house, already feeling full with the 3 of them on weekends. Thought about what it would mean to share his space completely, to fully merge their lives. We'd need to talk to Lily, he said. Obviously. And you'd need to be okay with living in a house that's a fraction of the size you're used to. I'd be okay with living in a tent if it meant being with you. That's dramatic. That's honest. She took his hand. I know this is big. I know it's scary. But I'm tired of living in 2 places. I want to be all in, Ethan, if you'll have me. He pulled her close, kissed her temple. Yeah, I'll have you. They told Lily that night. She listened seriously, asked practical questions about where Sienna would sleep and whether she'd have to share the bathroom, and if this meant Sienna was staying forever. Not forever, Sienna said. Nothing's forever, but for as long as it works for all of us. That's a weird answer. It's an honest one. Lily thought about it. Okay, but I get to help decorate if you're moving in, and you have to learn to make Dad's lasagna the right way because his is still bad. Deal. And if you hurt my dad, I'm going to be really mad at you. That's fair, but I'm going to try very hard not to hurt him. Okay then. Lily went back to her book like the conversation was settled. Maybe for her, it was. Sienna moved in over the summer. Not all at once, but gradually, bringing boxes of clothes and books and the few pieces of furniture that fit the space. She kept the condo for a while as a safety net, then finally sold it in September. That felt significant, like burning boats, committing fully to the shore she'd chosen. The house adjusted. They converted the garage into a home office for Sienna, insulated and heated, where she could take calls and manage work without overtaking the living space. Lily helped pick paint colors, choosing a deep blue that Sienna pretended to hate but secretly loved. Life found a rhythm. Ethan worked at the shop, came home to dinner that was sometimes made by him, sometimes by Sienna, occasionally by all of them together. Lily excelled at school, made the travel soccer team, started asking questions about business that Sienna answered with the same seriousness she'd give a board member. Weekends were soccer games and grocery shopping, and the mundane domesticity Ethan had thought he'd lost forever. On a Friday evening in October, exactly 1 year after Sienna had first walked into his shop, they sat at the kitchen table while Lily did homework. Rain drummed against the windows. The radiator clanked, normal sounds of a normal life. I have something for you, Sienna said, pulling an envelope from her bag. If this is another contract, I'm not signing it. It's not a contract. She slid it across the table. Open it. Inside was a check, made out to Ethan Cole, for $15,000. He stared at it. What is this? Your money back. From the original arrangement. I'm returning it. I don't want it back. I earned that. You did. But I want to start clean. No transactions, no payments, no lingering questions about what we were versus what we are. She pushed the check closer. Use it for Lily's college fund, or don't cash it at all. I just need you to have it, to know that what we have now isn't built on a business deal. Ethan picked up the check, torn between practicality and principle. This feels symbolic. It is symbolic. I'm terrible at romance. This is the best I can do. You're not terrible at romance. I bought you a check for our anniversary. That's pretty terrible. He laughed, set the check aside. Okay, it's a little terrible, but I get what you're saying. Do you? Yeah. You want to rewrite the beginning, make it less transactional. I want to acknowledge that we've become something real, something that matters, something worth building on. She reached across the table. I love you. I should probably say that. I'm terrible at saying that too. Ethan's chest tightened. They'd been dancing around those words for months, both too scared to say them first. I love you too, even though you're terrible at romance. Especially because I'm terrible at romance? Maybe. Lily looked up from her homework. Are you guys being mushy? Extremely mushy.
Sienna confirmed. Gross. Can I have a snack? The moment broke, dissolving into the ordinary chaos of parenting. But the words had been said, and they hung in the air like a promise. Later that night, after Lily was asleep and they were getting ready for bed, Sienna said, Do you think she's happy? Really? Lily? Yeah, why? Because I worry I've disrupted her life, changed the dynamic she was comfortable with. You have changed things. But changed isn't the same as bad. Ethan pulled her close. She has more stability now, more laughter, more people who care about her. That's not disruption. That's growth. You really believe that? I really do. They stood there in their small bedroom in a house that had once been too quiet and was now full of life. And Ethan thought about how far they'd both come. From a desperate transaction in an auto shop to this, something built on honesty and effort and the willingness to try even when it was hard. The story could have ended a dozen different ways. Sienna could have walked into his shop and he could have said no. She could have lost the company and disappeared back into whatever life she would have built from the ruins. They could have taken their payment and their lessons and never spoken again. But they hadn't. They'd chosen the messy, complicated, uncertain path of actually trying. And somewhere along the way, the performance had become real. Winter came again, then spring, then summer. The shop celebrated its best year on record. Lily finished 4th grade at the top of her class. Sienna's company expanded into new markets, hired 100 new employees, won awards for workplace culture that she accepted with genuine pride. On a Saturday morning in June, Ethan woke to find Lily and Sienna in the kitchen making pancakes. Lily was on a step stool, carefully flipping them while Sienna supervised. They were laughing about something, easy and comfortable, like they'd been doing this forever. He stood in the doorway watching them, this family they'd built from broken pieces and careful choices. Nothing about it was perfect. Sienna still worked too much. Lily still had moments of grief for the mother she'd lost. Ethan still worried about things he couldn't control. But they were happy, genuinely, messily, imperfectly happy. Are you going to help or just stand there? Lily called. Just observing, Ethan said, moving to join them. You seem to have it under control. We do, Sienna agreed, meeting his eyes over Lily's head. We really do. And they did. Not because everything was easy, but because they'd learned that real connection didn't require perfection. It required presence, honesty, and the courage to keep choosing each other when walking away would be simpler. The mechanic and the CEO, the single father and the woman who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten how to let people in. Two people from different worlds who'd found common ground in the space between wealth and struggle, performance and authenticity, fear and hope. The story didn't end with a wedding or a dramatic declaration. It ended with pancakes on a Saturday morning, with oil stains still under Ethan's fingernails and corporate calls waiting in Sienna's future, and Lily's drawing on the fridge showing 3 stick figures holding hands under a sun that took up half the page. Real life. Messy and imperfect and worth every complicated moment. Because in the end, that's what mattered. Not the money or the status or the carefully constructed facades people wore to survive. What mattered was finding someone who saw past all of that to the person underneath. Someone who stayed when leaving would be easier. Someone who chose to build something real instead of settling for something safe. Ethan had thought he was done with that kind of connection, had convinced himself that his capacity for love had died with Sarah, that what he had left was only enough for Lily and the small life they'd carved out. He'd been wrong. There was always room for more, for growth and change, and the terrifying possibility that tomorrow might be better than today. You just had to be brave enough to try. So they tried, and failed sometimes, and tried again, and slowly, patiently, built something that lasted not because it was easy, but because they chose it. Every single day, they chose it. And that made all the difference.